truth, got to find it out. NASA can't go to space, so we hit the roof. Get it, hit the roof, and it all came to light with 200 proofs. Now I'm just really sick of people lying to me. So when I tell the truth, don't come crying to me. Pick up the phone, get on the line with me. Line with me. Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call?
And welcome everybody to Globebusters 2020 Vision, seeing the lies with perfect clarity. I am your host, Bob Xanadude60, and we are back with another great show for you today. And what are we doing here? Oh, okay. Sorry, my number one engineer is working on something. Working on something while I talk. So sorry, I was a little distracted. Anyway, we are back with another great show for you today. We haven't been here since before the Christmas break. And obviously a whole lot of nifty stuff has happened that we're going to talk about. Of course, we brought 2019 to the close and kind of ushered in 2020. And 2020 is going to be an interesting year, guys. I really believe that. Many of you may have seen one of the videos that I posted last week by Martin Kenny, and it deals specifically with the celestial alignments that are going to take place, and also historically the things that have happened with these celestial alignments. Now, the thing I liked about that video is it's not a doomsday type of prediction. What he was predicting is just saying that, look, a lot of interesting stuff happens when this happens. And I think that, the evidence so far is that, that's absolutely true. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens during 2020. But it's already off to a very interesting start with some of the stuff that we've seen come to fruition. So we will get to that here shortly. But before we do that, let me go ahead and introduce my posse for today. First up, as always, we have Jeran from Jeranism. How you doing today, Jeran?
Hey, doing quite well. Thanks, Bob. Decent weather today. Skies are clear. Can't ask for much more. But we do need to send some well wishes towards Dave Weiss, who's not feeling too well. He's under the weather. So even though he never gets sick, sometimes he does. So shout out to Dave Weiss.
All right. Well, I didn't know that. I didn't even see that. I didn't see him post that. But well, shout out to Dave Weiss. Hope you get feeling better, and Paige will take care of you today. That'll be awesome. And as far as the weather here today, it's a nice day. A little bit of clouds, a little bit of breeze, but overall, it's a pretty day, and I am so looking forward for spring and summer to come back in. Obviously, we're going to. The only thing I'm not looking forward to is getting our house, up on the market, and which I kind of am, but I'm just thinking about the ungodly experience of having to move. I mean, it was a pain in the butt 20 years ago when we moved in here, and it's just not something I look forward to.
So. No, it's never fun. So never fun at all. But I did tell David Weiss to eat some chicken noodle soup, which I believe is the Jewish penicillin. So.
Yes, yeah, it works for me a lot. I love chicken noodle soup, so there you have it.
At least it's a good thing about being sick.
Yep, for sure. Okay, and Ben, Taboo Conspiracy, is not going to be with us today, or if he is, he may be in later. I know he's working on some video. But Ben is, we were kind of talking the other night, and he is at kind of a point in his life where he has got so much going on with the family and all his other flat earth stuff and his job that it's kind of really a burden for him to have to make every single episode of Globebusters. And actually, that's okay. I understand that. He's still going to be working with us, behind the scenes. He's still going to be working, setting up the Globebusters Pro series and editing all the videos and stuff. So he's still very much going to be active with Globebusters, and he will be on, shows maybe once, twice a month. I don't know, whatever works out for Ben. But, that's fine. And that's one of the reasons that, I decided for 2020 that I was going to implement an idea where we're going to kind of mix it up a little bit. And Globebusters has always been known for having some of the best minds, I believe, in flat Earth. We started out with TJ, and TJ was a really smart guy. And then of course we had John the Morgile on. We had Kirk, Curious Life of a Flat Earther, on with us. And all of these guys have made the Globebusters, have contributed to making the Globebusters what they are today. And of course, we brought Iro Landucci on with us. And by the way, Iro Landucci is with us today. So let's say hi to Iro. Hey, Iro, how you doing, man?
Hello, everyone. I was waiting my turn. Thank you so much. And I recommend the MMS to David Weiss.
There you go. I think Morgile would too. He swears by that stuff.
Yes, I use all the time. Here in the Linda's house, we have the CDS version. It's called CDS instead of MMS, which is a different kind of, it's the same principle, but it's a different kind in terms of the taste and how your body absorb. But it's really fast. I used to have, for example, when I used to have cold, some cold, I take me like 3-4 days, depends. And after using this quote unquote medicine, it's only like 1 day, and the next day I'm perfectly.
Yeah.
So I really recommend it.
Yeah, I think I should try that too. They say a lot of the things like that do that essentially is it's getting more oxygen into the bloodstream.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Yeah, that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah, in fact, that is why, and I believe it's a really nice idea that you was talking about. They bring new people and mix a little up the show. So I mentioned this before, but we can invite someday the guy who is behind the MMS, and he can explain very well because he speak English. So, but essentially, yes, it's oxygen. It's when you drink it in your stomach, it's going to produce like a chemical reaction where it's going to release oxygen. And these guys, these millionaires, like for example, the guy, the singer of Rolling Stone, that they use this kind of therapy when they go to certain clinics, and they suck the blood and put oxygen and then return into the body. I don't know which is the name in English for that process, but it's something like that for poor people.
Interesting. Yeah.
If you want to see in that way, it's not the same thing, but it's bring oxygen at molecular level. So it's not a medicine. It doesn't cure nothing, because it's not to cure. It's just for give to the body what the body needs to create this combustion inside to use energy, and the best way is the oxygen. That is why all these therapies or techniques to get better in terms of how you breathe is because your body needs oxygen, so this is like a boost of oxygen. It's nothing more than that.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I also had somebody send me some information on something called Brown's gas, which is kind of like a plasma state of water. And anyway, he found out that if you dilute it enough with normal air, you can also breathe it, and it will give your body a dramatic increase in oxygen as well. So I haven't quite gotten that advanced, but I just find it interesting that seems to be the big thing. That our bodies are becoming oxygen deprived and oxygen starved. And I know for a fact, as I've gotten older, I've lived in Colorado pretty much all my life. I've lived in a few different places, but as I've gotten older, and I'll be turning 60 in November this year, that whenever we go to like Hawaii or any place that's at sea level, where the oxygen content is higher, I always feel a lot better. So to me, it's not a myth.
Yeah, and I remember when I was young, now I'm 38, but at the age of 20 something, I remember see in the television like a really old guy, like 85 years old guy in a scenario giving talks and with like a tank of oxygen, and the guy starts jumping and going to the floor and make some exercise at 85 years old. And he talked like the secret was like the last 20 years of his life was consuming pure oxygen, certain amounts of minute at the day. So when I start research about this substance called the MMS and the principle behind, I start to connect with that story that I remember at when I see it in that time. And yeah, it's all based in oxygen, our system, simple as that.
Yep, for sure. All right, beautiful. All right, so anyway, I'm getting back to what I was saying earlier before we brought to Jeran about the panel, is that, one of the things that I want to try in 2020, Globebusters, we're going into our, fifth year, I think? Holy cow, I can't believe we've been around that long. But we're going into our fifth year, and we've definitely had some personnel changes. But I think one thing I want to try this year is, kind of mixing up the panel a little bit, for several reasons. Like I said, for, to be able to give other panel members a break, to bring in a little bit more diversity to the panel. And so I'm always on the lookout for people that are, really, really sharp in their, in what they're doing in their research. That's how I found Iru. And actually, I have to say, I think Iru found me, and then I just kind of lucked out. But before that, we had John the Morgal, who's a fabulous researcher, and Kirk was really good, and Taboo Conspiracy, well, that goes without saying. And I found another young man that is a little bit different demographic. He's not a big YouTube producer, but he does most of his work on Facebook, and he's very sharp. I honestly don't know how old Austin is, but I think he's probably in his early to mid 20s. I could be wrong. I'll actually have to ask him one of these days, maybe next week when we bring him on the show. But he is the kind of person that he handles trolls like a boss. He's really good at handling debates and people that ask questions. Very, very sharp individual, young, has a wonderful attitude, I would even say just a little bit of smartass, which I really like about him, but very confident demeanor, and I think our audience is going to like him as well. So we're going to be bringing him on starting next week and see what you guys think of him. But I think he's one individual that's really good. Of course, we also have Rodrigo Ferrari Nunez that comes on the show. He is a doctor in anthropology, and he has contributed a lot to both Globebusters as well as the Jeranism Friday Lounge show. And he's just a wonderful person that we really like having on. And I've also been toying with the idea I'd really like to bring a woman onto the show as well to kind of mix it up gender-wise. And we've had Karen B and my wife Aisling or Cami on several times before, but I just want to mix it up.
Jessica Alba, I think is who.
Jessica Alba, yeah, that'd be good.
I'll give her a call.
Okay, yeah, give her a call, bring her on. And who's the other one? Jessica Alba or Jessica Biel?
Yeah, Biel. Yeah.
Biel's, yeah, okay.
I don't think she's available. We'll see.
Yeah, probably not. Well, we have quite a few hotties in Flat Earth, I think so. We'll be able to find somebody like that. But it's just good to represent, not because they're hot or anything like that, but I think it's good to have a woman's opinion on the panel. It's a little bit different thoughts. Women think differently, and a lot of times it's really quite refreshing. What they bring to the table. I know when Cami looks at stuff, she'll say something and I'll go, "Wow, I never looked at it that way before." And Jeran, I know that does the same thing with Missa. She'll say stuff, and then he'll call her crazy and tell her to get out, and right.
Then have to backtrack.
Yep. And you have to go, okay. Yeah, just this morning I told Cami something about notifications. She's like, no, this really happens. I go, no, it doesn't. It's never happened. So she pulls it up and she shows it to me, and it's like, God damn it. I just hate being wrong all the time when it comes to me and Cammy. So, she's the brains of the family. I might as well deal with it, right?
Right. Might as well admit it and move on.
Funny. Okay, so anyway, what you guys have been watching over here on this stream, just wanted to point this out. First of all, let me throw a hat tip out to 11RTYU, YouTuber who put this out. And he's actually got some really good stuff that he's put out in the past, but today he put out something that was really kind of cool. Somebody actually recreated the Tesla Starman with their own green screen and did a comparison of it to the original. And lo and behold, they were able to replicate it perfectly, which, like I said, is just another, nail in the coffin, showing that this is all so simple with CGI and it doesn't require a $60 million a day budget to do it, So.
Wow. How exactly did they reconstruct this with a green screen?
Yeah, you are telling me that the guy put, buy or use a real car and make the same kind of mannequin and blah blah blah, or it's just like a concept art, well, maybe that was the way that these guys do it.
Well, let's see. So here's the original one. And it says, "This is a fun project. We've tried to imagine what it would take to fake the Tesla in space on a green screen. First pass is optical, is actually us generating the Earth glow off screen. We think it looks better than real, blah, blah, blah." And then apparently they replicated the rest of it. So, but yeah, it's just interesting that somebody can do that.
That for me, that it's that car there.
Yep, that's the car.
It's like a little strange. I mean, it's like being cut off from the original. I don't believe that. This is my opinion, okay? But the left part of the car, how is lighting? I don't think, because if you have, first of all, when you use a green screen, you're gonna have something called spill suppressor to do, which is when the green screen, when the green color start bleeding into your object. So you need then to color correct and take out the especially in metal surface, when really absorb the color that is surrounded. So it's like they took like just like a black steel frame, then they cut off and they maybe recreated the CGI globe Earth behind it. But it's a little strange to think that because I was expect to see some kind of not behind the scenes, but something like, okay, I'm gonna show how I set up, I bring the car, I recreate even the mannequin, where he took the suit of the mannequin. That is a special suit that only SpaceX use, so it's a little strange,
Yeah,
right. I think it's a little different than we're thinking. I think it's more that they cut and pasted the car and then did a CGI globe in the background. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, something like that. But even the kind of, it's a one-on-one perfect match. I mean, it's a little strange.
Confused what exactly they're showing. If the right is the reconstruction, I guess I don't know. Maybe I can reach out to the channel maker and ask exactly what they're claiming that they've done here.
Yeah, I agree. I just thought it was interesting though, and it doesn't surprise me that it would be easy to reconstruct, honestly. So because it was such a piss poor job in the first place, especially being able to see the Earth through the wheel wells, through the disc brakes. It could have been much better.
Yeah, we'll do a little background checking on this and see if we can find out exactly what they've done. But very interesting. Absolutely.
All right, so moving on. Now, this is something we talked about on Friday, and we talked about it, and it's interesting. I guess I'll just go ahead and let this play in the background. This is actually this is the UAP one. Let me go ahead and just kind of play this in the background without the music. Well, first of all, a couple things that he has on the UAP version. This is cool. I don't know if you guys saw the whole thing, but you can see these things that look like seagulls that are flying around up in space. Now, to me, they look a lot like seagulls. You know, when you look at them from a distance, it's pretty interesting. You can actually see them in here, and this is part of the UAP composite, which I thought was interesting. And so he had two parts of this, and one showed the seagulls up in outer space. Of course, we're starting to see all kinds of crazy things up in outer space that we're not supposed to be seeing. But what came up last week, and actually has been really making the rounds a lot on the internet, is this rat. What people are calling a rat that is running around on this rocket nozzle, right? And as you also pointed out, there seems to be some sort of, or I don't know if it was Zero, if it was Rodrigo, but there's like this pulsation going on here, which I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that. But you guys are going to see something that looks an awful lot like it may be like a rat with like Mickey Mouse ears, kind of crawl around on this. And he's going to zoom in. There it is right there, kind of coming around. And we're going to get it kind of more of a close-up here. And if we stop it, one thing that is really sticking out for me is like these, what appear to be like ears, okay? And that's one of the really striking features that I thought, wow, that's pretty crazy, is that maybe that is some sort of a rodent or a rat. And then we talked about it on Friday, and I was content to say, well, okay, maybe it could be just a chunk of ice or something like that. But then, so let me go ahead and we'll just get one more close-up of this so you guys can see it really well. And there it is. It looks like it's got these big mouse ears on it, which is really bizarre looking on it. So I actually started looking for mice that are in the vicinity of where SpaceX supposedly took off. And it just so happens there's a specific type of desert rat that has these big funky looking ears like this, right? So I would have been content to kind of leave that alone and say, okay, well, maybe that was ice or something, because I know a lot of the ballers are saying, well, it's an ice. But then we had Critical Inception, which was going through this footage, and lo and behold, he found, sorry about that. He found another one of a different launch that seems to have the same set of ears. Now, that's kind of bizarre. So now I'm thinking, well, maybe it is a rat again, because how can we be having this exact same piece of ice form if it's, something completely different? Oops, let me start over again. Yeah. Okay, and he puts his little disclaimer on here, and hat tip to Critical Inception for this. I think his name is Alex, if I'm not mistaken. So he found this on the official SpaceX channel. And he found another mouse from a completely different launch, as he says here. And we're going to actually take a look at this. And I wanted to see what you guys think about this, because the clarity is not as good. Not that the other one was great clarity anyway. But again, what's very prevalent is these big old, huge Dumbo-looking ears on this whatever it is. Right there, they are. Look at that. It looks almost exactly identical to a completely different launch. And the way it kind of moves around also, to me, looks like a rodent. What do you guys think?
For me, it's a little strange, because if you know how I have a lot of encounters with rats, and they are not going to react like that if, we need to assume that the motor is turning off, and all we see, the gas, exhausting gas and things like that is not supposedly happening, because a rat is not going to stay in that way, walking around a thruster.
Well, that's absolutely certain, Jeru. It couldn't be that hot. So, I think what that's an indicator of is that it's something much different than a rocket. It's some sort of a background for it.
I cannot say that is a rat. Maybe someone believed that, and it's okay. But for me, they are not so stupid like that. I mean, it's a little strange because all of for me that kind of image that we see is um, it's like a mix between real image and post production, because for me it's not going live, but it's like the way it's moved, it's more like some kind of dust, really dust chunk, something like that. I cannot say that is even in a biological being, but that's my opinion.
Okay, fair enough. And
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, I've watched literally hours and hours of SpaceX launches and seen so many of these rocket nozzles, and there's always some little anomalies and some little things flying around. And for me, I just don't know if I tend to think that might be a launch, or not a launch, but a real rocket firing. So if I think that, then I certainly can't think that there's any mouse crawling around on it. Now, if we just say, oh, it's all fake, and well, then I don't think it's being faked in a place where there would be a mouse. But that's kind of, and again, I'm kind of what you're saying is if people think they see that, hey, well, by all means, they can think that. I don't see enough evidence to tell me that that's a mouse that's crawling around the rocket nozzle there.
And I remember also when it was, in the internet talking about the moss, I believe that is the name, is like a fly inside ISS. And that was because the quality of the video was really low and nobody see the cord that it was,
Right.
attached to the end of that string, which was like some kind of a metal tiny part that when the astronaut start moving, that thing start orbiting him. And that was just simple as that. It was like a piece of metal in the end, like a collar. Collar is the name when you
Yeah.
use this. Yeah. So a lot of people start saying, "Oh, we have a moss or we have a fly inside ISS," and blah blah blah. And no, it was a low quality video that someone started saying that, and then a lot of YouTube channels replicated, and that was not the case, because when you research and go to the archive of NASA and find the HD video, you can clearly see that that was just a string, like a plastic string with the metal attached in the tip, and nothing like that. Just that. So we need to be very carefully with these assumptions, because I remember also, for example, I am not a big fan of the video that supposedly there are this giant head out in the space. That was the funny title for that case, where you can see like in some kind of mission of a space shuttle, this reflection in the screen where it's like a head in the space, which
Yes.
clearly is just in the glass in front. It's not in the
Yes.
background like a lot of people was posting. So this kind of stuff is you need to be super
Careful. Yeah, I agree.
confident about that, because if not, you are like an asshole.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we actually covered that on Globebusters, gosh, a couple years ago, because everybody was going, oh, look. In fact, I think it was Geo, I forgot Geo, the rest of it.
GeoShifter.
GeoShifter, yeah, GeoShifter actually put out with that, and then I looked at it and I started looking at some other source footage, and it was clear that what happened is somebody was filming that from a television, and it was their own reflection that they were catching in the television. It was not a big giant person, behind the space shuttle. So yeah, I agree, and we definitely debunked that one a while back. And you're right. You have to be very careful on this. The only thing, like I said, the only thing that gives this any credence at all, in my opinion, is the fact that here we have two different launches, and we have whatever this thing is, it seems to have the same shape, and it kind of looks a little bit like a rodent. So whether it is or not, I don't know. I'm certainly not going to claim absolutely it is, because they're both very poor quality for sure. And, we just don't know. But I just think it's interesting that it would turn up this thing with the big old Dumbo ears on two separate videos. So I'm not discounting the possibility either.
And if it's a rat, it must be like a dinosaur rat, because if you know how big that thruster is, and you see the size that the rat is in terms of, I mean, that rat will be like meters long. Because how is the size of that thruster in diameter? How many meters or
Well,
centimeters?
that's true, but we could be
whatever.
looking at a model too. Or that's the whole thing. We
Yeah,
really
but,
have
well, that
nothing to
is-
scale it against.
Of course, that is why you need to put on to justify that is a rat. You need to create like a Disney world around it.
It's Mickey Rat. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I just think it's interesting. So there you have it. And Jeran just dropped a link in the.
I wouldn't play the video, but if you go
But
to
what is the legs? Where are the legs, the eyes, the rest of the body?
Well, it's way out of focus for that. We don't have the resolution to see
Yeah,
that.
but you have all the rest of the thruster is in focus, so that is not the way that the camera and the lenses work. It's
Don't-
that's
just
my
pause,
opinion.
go to about 11 seconds, Bob.
11 seconds.
Yeah, and just pause it right there so you can see that. So, I mean, this is kind of what I think that they're doing, right? So, and I do think that they are firing this engine, and then you can just have this black background, and you've got a camera attached to it, and you just show this, and it's like Ebru said, it's not live. It's simply I don't know,
Mass production, yeah.
test firing, right? And so, if it is firing, then the whole idea of any mouse being on this contraption seems
It's
ridiculous.
ridiculous. Yes.
Right. There's no mouse that's going to climb up here and then I do think, as far as what I've looked into, they use some sort of cryogenic liquid to fire these things. So the idea is if you fired this and you're using some sort of cryogenic liquid, that there could be ice forming on these pipes, right? And then the ice would be blowing around and could kind of get caught up in one of those channels and come around the side or whatever. So that's why I don't think that there's, at least as far as I can tell, any kind of possibility that could be a mouse, unless it's all CGI, the firing, and basically this thing's sitting in a warehouse somewhere and somehow the mouse decided to get up on this and do a little dance. But I don't think that that's what's going on. But
And then they are not going to use a miniature of that rocket because they already have it in real scale, and all these props, all this warehouse where they store this and test it. So it will be really bad idea to trying to replicate in a scale so tiny that a rat is like the same diameter of these thrusters. It doesn't have any sense for me.
And then if you go to like 47 seconds, Bob, if you move to 47, again, I wouldn't play the video just because. But I think that, and this is kind of funny because whenever I see these test firings, rarely do I ever see a camera where the camera is, and I think the reason for that is because people would see, oh, that looks identical to the SpaceX launches, right? Showing this view looks different because we never see this view from SpaceX. But if they were to actually take the camera, put it behind the nozzle, and kind of show the direction. Looking away from it, then I think it would look almost identical to what they're claiming is done in space. So that's why you'll rarely see them with cameras on their test firing equipment. But that's what I think is basically happening. So if this thing is really firing, which I think when they tested it really is, then there would be no mouse that would go anywhere near them.
It couldn't survive it. You're right. So I guess that begs the question then that, if it is a piece of ice or some sort of cryogenic type stuff, then it must be a coincidence, right? That it just happens to have mouse ears, big old Dumbo looking mouse ears on it.
That's what.
That's the weird part. That's the only thing that is even giving me any pause whatsoever, and giving it any credibility that it might be a rodent,
Right.
So whatever. And the other thing, I haven't watched this, but does this thing start glowing red hot when they fire it? Like they show it in the other one?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's a lot of videos of these test fire. I'm sure you could find one that does glow, but you're right. That is weird how and I've always made comments about that. I don't see how it could glow red like that and still keep its shape. If something was that hot, I would think that it would melt, but who knows? I'd have to look into some more test firings. I think I've got some stuff saved on OneNote that's because I have seen one or two test firings where I don't want to say they never put a camera behind it. I have seen it, and that's why I've said before, and it's in one of my old videos, I don't know, where I showed it. I think Ebru even brought it up that he remembers me showing, look how this looks exactly like the SpaceX launches. And it was just a test firing with a camera behind it. So, yeah, that's my opinion on it. But you never know, and I think it's always good to bring this stuff up and iron it out and see what people think. And, but again, if people want to think that maybe that's a mouse, hey, I'm not going to stop you.
Yeah, me either. I mean, Yeah, so I'm gonna, I'll just withhold whatever I think of it is. It's interesting, I'll put it that way. But I thought it needed to be covered because I mean, literally, people have been going bananas over it,
Right.
and I just wanted to address it and see what everybody thought, and put it out there. All right, cool. So, all right, so next up, guys, take a look at this picture, and this is a mainstream education, proponent type site, Papa Libertarian, WordPress, whatever. Children are not interchangeable cogs. And the thing that I found hilarious about this is it says education works best when all the parts are working together. Now, everybody, take a close look at these cogs, right? And if you try and move any one of them, well, it doesn't work. They will lock up. In other words, there's no way that these cogs could ever possibly work. And I just thought this was the dumbest thing I have ever seen in my life. They're trying to make a point like, oh, yeah, all the cogs coming together and working. And in fact, there's no way that this possibly could work. What do you guys think?
That's funny. Certainly looks like I would have some issues.
It definitely would have some issues. So
Yeah, but what is the Jesuit cog there? Because I don't see it. You need that, like something like that kind of cog to start moving these three.
yeah, a big bang. I don't know, something. It's hilarious, that they would actually associate this. And then Cammie was actually looking at it this morning, and she found a whole bunch of people that are making fun of this all over the web, and it deserves it. It's just stupid. Just straight up stupid. It's a gridlock. And I think ironic and representative of the real system, dumbing people down. Pretty funny. All right, so we'll get past that one. And okay, yeah, I guess we can talk about this. So I found I was going on Facebook, and I see a lot of posts because I'm a moderator on the official Globe and Flat Earth discussion group, and I came across somebody that posted this new map, right? And so I looked at it and I thought it was pretty cool. And Eero, it turns out, actually knows these guys. But what they've done is they are doing the land layout according to the sun's position, all right? And that's how they've actually placed their continents. And the thing that was interesting about this is Cammie looked at it and she goes, that's not bad. It's pretty close as far as the continent layout. Now, what is wrong about this map, and this is something that I think that, we actually talked to these guys on the phone a while back, is that the continent sizes are still wrong. They're still off. And so that's something that I think they're going to be fine tuning. But at least according to our way of thinking, there's certain sizes that are definitely discrepancies, but the layout we think is pretty close. And so like I said, the methodology that they're using is they're actually, getting in contact with people around the world that can, make observations at specific sun angles, specifically at zenith or whenever it's like directly above, when you have the least amount of distortion that's going to be giving you an apparent position of the sun instead of a true position. And they're putting it together like that. Now, when we talked to them the other night on Skype or WhatsApp or whatever we were using some different app that they use in the Spanish-speaking countries, we found out that they are also trying to correct for the size discrepancies that are taking place below the equator, and they kind of went into that a little bit, which of course would give it discrepancies in size according to Google Earth, right? So when you look at Google Earth and you start sizing things up, especially south of the equator, there are some absolute discrepancies. But they're saying, well, the reason for part of that is because we are being misled as to, the area that is south of the equator. So I thought it was pretty interesting. And Eero, these guys. What do you think about this thing?
Yeah, I know the group behind this, Celino. It's the main character, the main guy behind this map, but he works with a lot of other guys who bring this together. And he has a YouTube channel called Samna, the Oraculo. Well, I don't know which is the name in English for Oraculo. Then I can send. Well, I imagine you have the link to share then in the comment section. But it was really nice. I remember and I showed this like at the end of Blockbuster show like 2018 or 2019, because the fact is, when you, and this is my way of seeing this kind of thing. I am not a really good in terms of the maps, projections. That is why I really like to share that video about the masterpiece of the Gleason map. And what is clear for me, it's when you see the analemma in the sky, you immediately understand the reverse engineering that the second law of Kepler is doing, because supposedly, I believe was yesterday, the Earth reached the highest acceleration around the sun. That is the news,
Was it yesterday or today? I thought that was today that we hit.
Well, yesterday, today is the same.
Yeah,
thing.
whatever. Yeah, close enough. Yeah,
whatever. That is based on this elliptical orbit that you can see, elliptical movement or path that you can see in the sky when you understand the analemma of the sun. But that implies that you have this big circle on the bottom. For me, at least, from in Argentina, when we see the analemma and the small circle on the top. So that is because the tropics are in different sizes, and that is where it's come this idea of the Grace Tyson saying that the Earth is more like a pear shape, because they need to compensate the reverse engineering to say, okay, the bottom of the sphere is a little wider than the top. That if you want to see in North Pole on the top and the South Pole in the bottom, because we know that supposedly it's not orientation, but the ecliptic and all this kind of stuff make some orientation, at least in the mind of the people. So the idea of the pear shape, he's not talking about that the Earth is a pear shape, because supposedly it's really, really tiny, the amount of pearness, if you want to see in that way. But that is mean they are, and by the way, where the Grace Tyson took that idea, that is not his idea. That came from the Vanguard 1 satellite launch in 1958 or 57, that supposedly, and I have the original video, supposedly that satellite, which is like a replica of the Sputnik but much smaller, take the measurement to determine that the Earth has a pear shape. So that is where it's come from. It's not an idea of the Grace Tyson or some other scientist. It came from the Vanguard 1, and please type Vanguard 1 in Google and see that crap. That cannot make even a simple math calculation. I mean, they don't even have a camera. They nothing. So all these kind of things came from the difference in the tropic size. And if you live in the flat stationary plane that has like a circle, like the primary geometry, of course you're gonna have more wider one tropic than the other. And that's, for me, it's where is all these things came, and this guy really do that kind of observation and trying to transfer into a map.
Yeah, very interesting. I'll type that Skype into, or I'll type that address into Google here in a minute. But Cami sent this one. This is something that Cami was kind of messing around with. She was trying to explain this concept to me about how they're hiding, this space. By kind of running an analogy to peeling like an orange, right? And how it comes out. And it's interesting because when she was doing that and we were looking at it, I said, wow, that's kind of bizarre because it looks kind of like a turtle, right? They say that the turtle is swimming around in space, whatever. I just thought that was interesting. But when you do it this way, this actually matches pretty closely to their map. And this is something similar to what she's come up with, and she just dropped this one in the chat. But they're actually kind of close. But anyway, so Cami got excited about it, and she got in touch with them, and so she's going to show some of her techniques that she's been using to them, and then use their manpower that they have, around the plane to be able to, do these observations and see if they can't fine tune this. But, like I said, one thing that is absolutely sure, and they're aware of it, we're aware of it, but the continent placement we believe is pretty close, but the continent size is still wrong, still off. And we're still trying, they're still trying to reconcile that. So there you have it. All right. And, oh shit. I just closed the wrong one.
How dare you?
Yeah, I closed I thought I closed Skype altogether and killed you guys.
I still think that the most amazing factor or evidence that we've seen that it just doesn't match at all what they've been telling us is this whole idea that the oldest globe, is from 1492. I've always thought that was hilarious. So it's just funny that if we've known for 2,000 years or even longer, as they like to say, that Aristophanes in 275 BC calculated the curvature of the Earth, then just think of all the people who would have started mapping the Earth on a sphere, because they supposedly knew that they lived on a sphere. Therefore, every map that you would make, you would start to construct on a sphere. Sure, you would have some flat maps and you would have some things easier to sail with or whatever, but there would still be globes. So the fact that the oldest globe that is in existence is only from 1492, and that map is completely wrong. I mean, at least according to today's standards, it's not even close. They have a whole ocean between, basically, I think that the whole ocean in that original map is between Europe and Asia. They have like a whole ocean there.
Right.
But to think that, I don't know, just that whole thing always has bothered me, or that they knew it was a sphere, they knew its dimensions. Aristophanes got it right, but Columbus, for some reason, thought that it took him 1,700 years after to even attempt that journey. It doesn't even make sense, and that he had to argue over it and get people's buy-ins. It makes more sense that there was still a debate about the shape of the Earth up until we don't even know. It's hard to tell with the printing press, and it'd be very easy to tell whatever stories you wanted to people. But I wanted to ask Iru a question about the Analema. Iru, does the Analema switch? You know how there's the fat side and the small side. If you look at kind of the figure 8, right? Does Iru know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Does that switch? So you know how there's a fatter top and a smaller bottom. At least when you view the Analema from the north. Do you know if it switches in the south? In the south, does the bottom of the 8 get bigger and the top get smaller?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah. It's like when we see some star constellation or the faces of the face of the moon, which is inverted. For example, right now here I'm in Switzerland and I see the moon inverted. Then I usually see in Argentina, and it's refer to, for me at least, for a plane where you are looking into in the inside part of the plane, and then when you go into the center of the plane, you're gonna need to see, because all the movement it's on the tropics. So you if you live in Europe, you're gonna see from inside to the outside, and if you are into the south, you're gonna look from the outside to the inside, but you are looking all the time between tropics. And
yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, it is interesting that, the globe has only been around for, the 500 years, and oh yeah, we've known it was a globe for 2,000 years. I mean, that is the most ridiculous, claim ever. So anyway, I'm actually going to do this one later. So what I want to cover next, guys.
Oh, let me stick to the Analema. Sorry. I'm just
okay, go ahead.
Trying to weigh this out myself. Okay, so Iru, when you're looking at the Analema, and I'm looking at one now, at least from the north, and it appears that the top circle is smaller and the the bottom circle is bigger. And I've always thought that was interesting because from the north, there's a smaller northern, track of the sun, and then in the south, we think that track is much larger, right?
Yes.
So I've wondered if we went down to the south and still the bottom part, was a little bit bigger than the top part, then that would be proof alone that the sun travels further in the south. So I was trying to look up an analemma from the equator, and I found one. And the analemma from the equator has a larger circle on one side than the other. So when you picture an analemma, if you turn it to its side and you're standing on the equator, shouldn't those two circles be identical circles?
Well, for me, maybe I'm gonna be a little confused, but for me, if you are in the equator, you are still looking at regular path in the object. In this case, the sun. It's not relative to you. You are not going to change the path of the sun because you are in the equator. You are still looking at the prefix.
Oh yeah,
path.
Spot it up. Good. Bob, scroll up to the top real quick.
I don't know if.
Well, I guess this is what I'm looking at is here. So let me see where it was. Scroll down a little bit more, Bob. I thought I had it. Where did I see?
Do you want me to go analemma from equator?
I'm trying here. Let me just share my screen.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me bring this up and share screen. Because I think I typed in something different. I probably spelled it wrong too. All right. Do you see my screen now?
I do, and you are presenting.
Okay. Yeah. I just typed in analemma from the south. But what I'm talking about is this picture here that seems to show the analemma like this. And it says, viewing the analemma facing west from the equator. So I'm thinking, well, if you're at the equator, wouldn't both circles be the same size? It should be like a perfect figure eight. You're standing at the equator, and the sun should have a bigger. But if you look here, if this person is literally looking west, which I know this isn't a real image or it's just an idea, but what I'm saying is if you're looking west and the bigger circle is on the left, then that means the bigger circle is in the south, smaller in the north.
Exactly.
Right. So doesn't that prove that the sun has a larger track in the south than it does in the north? The analemma, I think, proves it. If you look at this image here, this is from the north. How can I tell that? Well, because the sun is at its highest here. It's at its lowest here. So where is the bigger track? The huger track is in the south. The smaller track is in the north. So if I was wrong about this, then if you went to the south, then you should see the smallest track in the bottom and the biggest track in the north. But I don't think we see that. I think we always see a bowling pin kind of shape.
Yeah, exactly. So that is why I tell you that based on this, they need to create this second law of Kepler, and the acceleration and deceleration of the Earth around the sun. But in fact, it's the sun which accelerate or decelerate, or at least in our relativity way of looking into the sky. But there is where you have all this pear-shaped thing, because when we have summer in the south, the sun needs to make a wider path if the Earth is flat,
Right.
And that is the difference. You can transfer this figure eight of the sun path into the difference of the sign in the tropics and, all kind of stuff.
Right.
And in fact, if you are looking in some globes, for example, a model, they put the figure eight in like a equal size, like a number 8 with equal size. And that is not true.
No, it's like this.
It's
image.
like this. But when you start looking this kind of analemma, well, you need to ask questions. And that is not good for the establishment,
No, this is really good to I'll follow up further and just check it, because when I see something like this, I can tell you right away that this person is looking east. How do I know that? Because the bigger track of the sun will always be in the south. So if we were on a globe, the analemma should not be seen like this, in my opinion. If you were on the equator, the analemma would have because it should have an equal path to your left and an equal path to your right. It's making concentric circles. But if we're seeing it like this, well, then this is simply the larger track. The sun is further away. It's doing a longer path, and then when it's in its north, it's doing a smaller path. So, because you're taking the picture at the same time every day, right? You're taking it at noon or whatever. Anyway,
Yeah,
I get off on a tangent, but I'm going to look into that a little bit more because it doesn't seem to fit the globe at all.
That
to me.
actually makes a lot of sense to me, Jeran. It really does.
Right, and I've always seen it like this bowling pin. So it should be if globe is is correct, and I would expect that if you were in the south, that you would actually see a different, and I don't know what this guy's trying to say. This is from some flat earth debunking site. So I'll look into it a little bit more and follow up with it.
Yeah, but for debunking that, you need to assume the rotation of the Earth, the axial inclination, the
Right.
movement around the sun, and
Of course
a
have an
lot of
answer.
things that you cannot never detect it.
No. And of course they'll have an
Even
answer.
today, that
Like this would be-
supposedly we are in the highest accelerated point of our orbit.
Oh, great.
Yes, we are. We are at the closest point to the sun.
Yeah, be
what is
careful, man.
it? Is it perihelion? I believe is where we're at.
Yes, exactly.
Yep. So yeah, very interesting. All right, let me kick back over to the right. But yeah, Jeran, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. But then again, I'm no expert because this is where I'm challenged at, is this kind of stuff. So yeah,
Right.
I don't mean much on that when it comes to that. All right, so there we go. We should be back on the other thing.
So we're the closest to the sun today.
Yes, that's what they tell us.
And yet if I go outside at noon right now and look up, I won't even feel it. All right, got it. Check.
Yeah,
No,
by
and
300
here
Earth
in
diameters, or
Switzerland,
almost 400.
Right.
It's snowing. Here is snowing, but it's okay because the actual tilt, it's where they change the game.
Are you serious here? It's snowing there?
Yes. Not here in Basel, but in the
Oh,
mountain.
that's right.
No.
You're in You're okay. Never mind. I was thinking you were in Argentina for a second. It's like, whoa, no way.
No, that would be really, really bad. Maybe the apocalypse is near.
All righty then. Okay, cool. All right, so let's move on to the next thing. And hat tip to Karen B. and Brian Stavely. I was actually watching this on their show, and of course, this came up on Alex Jones' InfoWars with Mike Adams hosting it. And apparently, this kills me. First of all, what I want to say about this is that Alex Jones, after David went on there and basically, made a million really good points, as he was being interrupted like every 2 seconds by Alex, who wouldn't even let him speak. Well, so just to show you how lopsided this whole debate or discussion is, he just hands the reins over to Mike Adams to sit there and spout off. Well, bullshit would be almost too light of a word on his show, right? So we're going to play a little bit of this under fair use because we're definitely going to comment and criticize it. But this is Mike Adams on InfoWars, and he is addressing the flat earthers and some of their arguments that he has an issue with. And if there's any point you want me to stop so you can comment, just say something, I'll stop it. But other than that, I'm going to probably play, a fairly decent section of this, and I'll be cutting in and out for commentary. So let's give this a play. And again, this is under fair use. And so let's hear what Mr. Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, says.
You think they want us to learn the truth about that? No, of course not. They want to use information scarcity to control us, but they don't want humanity to be set free. But if you just look at the stars, if you just look up at the stars, you can start to see physical evidence that something's changing out there. Something's going on.
You know what, guys? This is the wrong one. Let me do this one first, and then we'll go to that one. Because the other one is where he starts making these unbelievably stupid assertions. So let's start this one. Sorry, my bad.
I think it's important. We're talking about flat Earth theory and the nature of the cosmos. And as much as I appreciate people asking big questions and questioning the official narratives, and it's true that NASA has lied about a great many things over the years, I think it's important to be able to distinguish between what's real in the physical universe versus something that's just a thought experiment or a theory. And I don't mean to be offensive by this, but from the outside perspective, I want those of you who might be following flat Earth theory, I want you to know that the way that we think of people who believe in transgenderism, where they say, oh, a man can become a woman, we say you're nuts, that's crazy. That's magical thinking. A man can't become a woman. A man can't get pregnant. That's the way other people think of flat earthers. And part of that, I think, is an effort to discredit legitimate conspiracy analysis.
Okay, so first of all, with that, I will say that a lot of people have definitely made that claim, that flat Earth is here as some sort of a psyop, to discredit legitimate conspiracy analysis. And I really realized this last night when I was going through some of my really old conspiracy pages that I used to frequent quite often, Rumor Mill News and Godlike Productions and all kinds of stuff like that. All of them are still all over the fake shootings and all kinds of stuff like that. They're all over that. But when it comes to flat Earth, every single one of them is saying no, it's an absolute psyop. But the interesting thing is they all use the same super lame debunking techniques and claims, just like Mike Adams is going to do here. So, it's no surprise that they would actually do that. And I have to say, if I was on the opposing team, I'd have to say that strategy is brilliant, right? Because they're saying, well, we're going to get all these other people to turn on the flat earthers because, yes, there is an absolute legitimacy to conspiracy research and, false flags and all kinds of stuff like that. But I think where they get it backwards is that if they would actually give flat Earth the time of day and really understand what's going on, it would go a lot further. And the reason I say that is because everybody's known about 9/11. It's been out there forever. Everybody knows about what's going on in Sandy Hook, but has it really made any difference? Has understanding that vaccines are poison and cause all kinds of health issues, has that really gone anywhere in the mainstream? Whereas, if people see flat Earth and actually listen to some of the arguments, in my opinion, then they're going to see that, yes, if they can lie about this, it all rolls down from here. At least that's my opinion on it. So, if you debunk the granddaddy of them all, that's pretty much going to take everything out. What do you guys think?
Completely agree. I mean, these guys, they because here happened the same thing. I mean, they start talking, even make the proper research. They just start assuming things and trying to compare with another topics that doesn't have anything to do with flat Earth. And they don't. If you start talking with these guys, they don't know even which is the how much you need to go into the sky to see the curvature of the Earth. So it's like a magical thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so let's continue on and listen to what else he says here. And like I said, stop me if you want to comment on anything. Here we go.
It's the first day of the year here, 2020. You're watching the Alex Jones Show. Mike Adams filling in for, the next couple of segments here in the fourth hour. And we just took a whole lot of amazing calls. The callers were great today, and they were very insightful. In fact, one of the points that was mentioned by one of the callers is how important it is to be on the streets legally and peacefully, sort of in the faces of those who are enemies of America. The radical left, the fake news so-called journalists who are really just CIA puppets, to get in their face, again, peacefully, lawfully, but film yourself, screaming the truth at those people when it's important to do so, like Owen Schroyer did. Again, we're not talking about attacking like the radical left. We're not saying go Antifa on these people. That's what lunatic leftists do. But we are saying engage them by shouting the truth at them. Hey, Joe Biden, your son got massive payoffs in a kind of a money laundering scheme that he didn't earn. And the foreign back. In fact, they're all on the take. They're all challenge him on these issues. And if Hillary Clinton jumps in, which she's going to, by the way, I have no doubts about that. AOC, hey, you're a lunatic. You want to collapse the food
Just
supply?
skipping forward here. This is all irrelevant.
Post them on Brighteon.com. That's why we built it for you, so you can have free speech. Or, post them on BitChute. Post them places where you can get the videos picked up.
Yeah, he built it so people could have free speech, but yet he still thinks that, flat Earth has to be suppressed. even if it's done in a peaceful way. I mean, this guy is a hypocrite from the get-go. But let's continue.
Share them with InfoWars. Do that stuff. It's important. Anyway, great calls today. A great show overall all day. And there's more here. I'm going to get into some mysteries of the universe in this segment. I'll probably do this segment and the next segment today. And I got to say, Alex specifically asked me, because I'm a published scientist, I run a science lab. He asked me to come in and talk about this flat Earth issue because it's becoming more and more popular. Apparently, the idea that the Earth might be flat is spreading among many people. And, you know, I've watched some of the videos myself. I've seen some of the discussion. And, of course, I will tell you that the Earth is a sphere. But I want you to understand why. And it's important that we all learn to think clearly as we're trying to navigate the craziness in our universe. But we have to have, I think, ideas that are grounded in reality, whether we're talking about economics or politics or the cosmos. And so when people talk about flat Earth, they're not malicious people, they're curious people. And they're trying to understand the way the universe works. I think they just reached the wrong conclusions. So I'd like to give you some important ideas today about the way the universe actually works and why the Earth is a sphere, so that you can answer these questions. If
He's
a
God,
flat Earth
you know?
person is trying to tell you or convince you that the Earth is flat, you can understand that it's not. And also, at the highest levels of that movement, I think, and this is not everybody who's in it, but maybe how it was founded originally, I think it was designed to discredit conspiracy analysts who are looking at 9/11 and saying, hey, how did World Trade Center 7 building, how did that building fall? Well, it was controlled demolition. Why do we know that? Because our explanation is consistent with the laws of physics. So we actually use science to understand false flags and domestic operations and the fake science of the vaccine industry. We can prove that it's fake. We can prove the vaccines are dangerous. We can prove the vaccines kill some children. In fact, those numbers are released by the government itself. It's under the VAERS system under Health and Human Services. You can download the spreadsheets that have the statistics. So everything that I argue, and I believe that when Alex is making similar arguments, we are all working to make these arguments from a place that's consistent with the understanding of cause and effect, how the universe works, the scientific reality. We don't have to invent a fake system of vaccine science to attack vaccines. We cite the actual published science, the statements that's in the vaccine inserts themselves. They admit these vaccines may have viral shedding, for example.
Yeah, and you know, the toothpaste manufacturers also admit that swallowing fluoride is an episode that needs poison control to be involved. You know, what difference does that make? You know, it has made zero difference ultimately, and that's why nobody is paying any attention to it. You know, as compared to flat Earth, when you actually start looking at some of the proofs that we offer, some of the actual science that we offer, well, Mike, this is the reason why, you know, so many people, that this idea, as you call it, is spreading so widely and so far, because this is actually appealing to people's common sense. And no, it's not something that you know, NASA is going to put on a box, or, you know, put on a, well, somebody's putting on a globe that it's not for educational purposes, but you know, essentially this is a different type of animal that we're talking about here. So you know, right away, all of his logic and reasoning is fallacious, absolutely fallacious, and he's about to get a whole lot worse as we progress along.
That the chickenpox vaccine can cause chickenpox to spread across your entire family. They admit these vaccines have never been tested on pregnant women. We don't have to invent an alternate universe to argue against vaccine safety or to argue about what happened on 9/11. We don't have to invent an alternate universe or kind of invoke like a comic book physics reality. And yet, in the flat Earth community, they come up with just totally wild alternate explanations, like, oh, gravity isn't real, I've heard. Or they say, no, it's all electromagnetism, that like tides don't work. It's actually water being pushed by the sun's electric rays or something. Maybe I'm not quoting them exactly, but I've heard some very bizarre things.
Yeah, well, you know, and on that, you know, to some level, At least he got that right. Yeah, we are seeing that it is all electromagnetism, but it's not just us. There are some mainstream groups out there that believe very much the same thing. High-level physicists, the Thunderbolts Project. These guys are not, hacks by any means. They're PhD-level scientists, engineers, etc. That are also claiming, electromagnetism. And frankly, their model works infinitely better than the ridiculous one that is put out, to us to consume on a daily basis, which these claims, as I'm going to go into a little bit later on here, become more and more absurd. In fact, that's kind of what Globebusters is about, is bringing these things to light to show you how absolutely patently absurd these claims actually are. Now, one thing that, go ahead here, Jeran.
I was just going to say the other thing that's weird about what he's saying or completely wrong is he says that we need this alternative universe to explain things, and that's not true. We don't need flat Earth to talk about 9/11. We just talk about 9/11. So we don't need flat Earth to talk about vaccine safety. We just talk about vaccine safety, and we don't need flat Earth to talk about alternative medicine or to talk about false flags or to talk about the lies of the media and politics. So what he's saying is completely wrong. It's not like in order to talk about those things, we need to bring flat Earth into it. That's not the case. We're just saying, hey, these things we're being lied to about, and guess what? We're also finding evidence that they're lying to us about where we live. So it's completely separate. And I don't know why he's making it sound like these things have to be connected. And they really don't have to be. It's just another lie, and it helps a lot of people see the bigger picture. But we certainly don't need it. We don't need flat Earth to talk about 9/11. So I don't know where he gets off saying that. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And the other thing I was going to mention, and of course, and I know that I am about in the 50 percentile, as far as flat earthers that agree with me on this. But, I have to say that it bothers me also when people are out there claiming there's no such thing as gravity. Well, in some ways, I agree with that. As far as the way that they have defined it, especially the utterly ridiculous, stupid model of gravity that Einstein presents of it being bendy space-time, I completely disagree. But obviously, as I stated before, I believe that there is a downward acceleration force. In fact, there is no doubt of that in my mind, and we have been, endeavoring to explain that. And we'll actually play maybe we'll even play Zach's video on this a little bit later on. But I do have to say, guys, that is one thing that bothers me, because to me, when you deny something that is patently obvious, especially to most of the world, whether they understand it correctly or not, to say that things essentially don't fall down or there's nothing that causes them to fall down, to me, I have to agree with them. It does not make us look good. But that's a battle that we will keep working on, and hopefully more and more people will start to understand where I'm coming from when I say that. So all right, that's all I have to say on that. So let's move forward with that.
It's like an alternate universe of physics. And that's not really a legitimate place to argue anything from. If you're going to argue about the way the world works or the way the cosmos works, it's important to understand how the laws of physics actually function. So let me give you a few things that are really, really good. Number one, a lot of us are long-range shooters, myself included. I've got a .338 Lapua Magnum rifle, and I'll shoot 1,000 yards, to warm up. And you can shoot 2,000 yards with those rifles. Well, everybody that's a long-range shooter, and many of you listening probably are as well, you know that in the ballistic software that you use, that gives you the holds, how many mils you have to hold, the spin drift, you have to hold to the left to account for spin drift if it's a right-hand turn for barrel twist and so on. The ballistics calculators, they all ask you what direction you are shooting. Are you shooting north or south or east or west? You know why that matters? Because the Earth is spinning, and as your bullet flies through the air, the Earth is actually spinning underneath your bullet. And if you fire north or south, your bullet's going to either appear to bend to the left or the right based on the Coriolis effect of the planet spinning. Every long-range shooter, even a SWAT shooter, a military sniper, a competition shooter, or just a casual civilian long-range shooter like myself, we all know that if you don't account for the spin of the Earth for very long-range shooting, you will miss your target, sometimes by 8 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches, depending on the flight time of the bullet, because the Earth is spinning. Similarly, if you shoot to the west or shoot to the east, that also matters too, because the Earth is spinning west to east. So if you shoot to the east, your target is falling away from you and lower, and you will end up shooting high if you don't account for the spin of the Earth. So long-range shooting right there proves that we are living on a planet that's spherical and that is spinning on its axis.
Yeah, and it also proves that you're an idiot, Mike. That it proves nothing of the sort. And in addition to that, we've looked at military sniper manuals where it absolutely does not show up. Now, since the flat Earth community has started, calling this out, well, where are all these claims, in the military shooter manuals and stuff like that? Well, apparently now they're getting these calculators that are actually figuring this in. But here's my question: if you're shooting 3,000 yards or 6,000 yards, up over a mile, and you're talking about a Coriolis effect that is going to move something, 3 inches, 4 inches, something like that. How do you actually, in real practice, adjust for that? Right? Do you fart on it? I mean, does it blow it over just a little bit? I mean, that is what I'm saying is that there is no way that you could possibly make such a minute adjustment cognizantly, right? Do you guys think that's even possible?
No,
Sorry.
but he need to apply the same kind of thought in terms of for example, the airplanes or the helicopters, or the ballistic missiles. It's not just why a bullet, but not to the rest of the flying object.
Exactly, and it's kind of like Neil deGrasse Tyson, doing his calculation on this field goal. If it would have been the Coriolis effect actually, made this field goal work. Well, same thing. Obviously, kickers can't be that precise either. And in my opinion, I don't believe for 1 second that over a distance of even 1,000 yards or even 500 yards, honestly, that somebody could consciously move that bullet and get it to move over precisely, 2 inches or 3 inches, something like that. To me, and granted, I'm not saying that there aren't snipers that actually can make these hits, but they are far and few between. And I would equate those shots more akin to being lucky than actually, having this raw skill where you can hit this and make these adjustments every single time. I shoot guns. I even got a marksman ribbon when I was in the Air Force. I'm not a bad shot, but obviously, I'm never going to claim that I can hit stuff. 3,000-4,000 yards away. That's ridiculous. Or 2,000 or 3,000 yards away. I could never do that. But I also know enough that you really cannot make those kinds of adjustments consciously and have any sort of consistency with it. So, and what exactly does it come out? Does the calculation say move your muzzle 3/10,000ths of an inch to the right, to make up for that? I mean, come on, guys. Again, this makes no sense at all to me. So this tired old excuse, which frankly Coriolis has been debunked over and over and over as something that is an apparent force. It is not real. It doesn't actually happen. It's apparent. It's an illusion. And, the notion that we actually have to compensate for it is ludicrous. And I think, and a lot of snipers out there that I think are absolutely on that same page. So, all right.
Yeah,
so
no, or like, JBM ballistics or something, and there's a page where the guy says, "Oh, I've added Coriolis effects. You can go in there, you can put in these things." And I've went in there before and looked, and there's nowhere that's asking you where you're at on the Earth. So imagine that. I mean, if you remember that there is no spin if you're at the North Pole, there is no spin if you're at the South Pole. So it would make a huge difference exactly where you're at, north or south. You'd have to input exact longitude and latitude, and you would have to be precise down to the exact millimeter.
Unbelievable gnat's ass. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. You wouldn't and then, you bring up that page where it's talking about modified point mass trajectories, and you can calculate different ones, but you have to put in all these things, and they want to know exactly the caliber, the spin direction, the different gravities, the muzzle velocity, all these different things. But the one thing they never ask you is where on the Earth you are, which would be the most significant change based on the Coriolis effect. So
absolutely,
it's just not true what he's saying. He's making it up. He can call himself a long range shooter. I would bet you if you went out and watched him shoot bullets at 2,000 yards that he wouldn't come within 10 inches of targets. So he can blame that whatever he wants.
He's reading Wikipedia,
Right.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, he searched for why is the Earth not flat. He saw something that said, oh, well, clearly it's because of the Coriolis effect, and shooters have, and then he just went with it and says, yeah, I go out and I shoot things at 1,000 or 2,000 yards, and of course that's what the mainstream will tell you. That's what you'll find when you look things up. But again, remember, these are journalists, and he just told us earlier, journalists are CIA puppets. He just told us all these things. He told us it's a psyop and all these. So he needs to recognize that what he's reading is simply not facts. I mean, he can believe that they're facts, but they're not. There's no sniper. We've talked to snipers who say they don't use it at all.
Right. And one thing I also want to point out, guys, if you remember our debunking of Professor Dave, right? When I used that video where Flat Earth, I can't remember his name. Anyway, where he was saying, okay, well, let's take a shot at the equator, and we're going to make this shot from this battleship towards a lighthouse, right? And his point was essentially that when he does that, the target's going to move, like 5 miles or something like that during the time that it takes to do that. Well, all of a sudden then, according to Professor Dave, it didn't matter anymore because the bullet was moving at the same frame of reference. In other words, he was trying to apply that linear frame of reference to a rotational frame of reference. He's saying, no. You fire that bullet, it's going to keep moving sideways, right? And therefore, in that instance, when they're trying to debunk it, then all of a sudden, well, the Coriolis isn't a valid argument anymore because that bullet keeps moving with the frame of reference of the Earth, right? I mean, which one is it going to be, guys? It's either moving or it's not. And you cannot sit there and pick and choose when you want to debunk one or the other. So, yeah, it just makes me crazy. All right, so let's move on.
And there are many more examples of this. I'll give them to you straight ahead. We'll continue here on the Alex Jones Show. Mike Adams. I think it's important. We're talking about flat Earth theory and the nature of the cosmos. And as much as I appreciate people asking big questions and questioning the official narratives, and it's true that NASA has lied about a great many things over the years, I think it's important to be able to distinguish between what's real in the physical universe versus something that's just a thought experiment or a theory. And I don't mean to be offensive by this, but from the outside perspective, I want those of you who might be following flat Earth theory, I want you to know that the way that we think of people who believe in transgenderism, where they say, oh, a man can become a woman, we're saying you're nuts. That's crazy. That's magical thinking. A man can't become a woman. A man can't get pregnant.
This is really a stupid analogy.
Think of flat earthers who say that the Earth is flat. To most people, it sounds like the way that it sounds to us when people say men can become women. Just letting you know that that's what it sounds like. And part of that, I think, is an effort to discredit legitimate conspiracy analysis. If you're questioning what happened at Oklahoma City, for example, was the FBI involved in that bomb? Actually, they were. That it was a whole FBI operation, and Timothy McVeigh was just the fall guy for it. But what they want to be able to say, the critics of all that, is to say, oh gosh, well, this person, they think Oklahoma City was a false flag, they think 9/11 was a false flag, and they think the Earth is flat. And right there, what that does is it just gives critics or the media immediate ammunition to say, well, they must be crazy. They think the Earth is flat.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I have to agree with them there. They do use that technique. It doesn't mean that it's true, but they certainly do use that technique, without a doubt. So, they're experts at playing both sides of the fence.
Especially since the Earth isn't flat, by the way.
Yes, it is.
So if it's especially important that we allow our analysis to be led by logic and the evidence. So there is evidence that the FBI has been running false flag operations. I mean, I can cite from you a New York Times story about the FBI running most terror plots in America and then recruiting people to carry them out and then stopping them at the last minute. That's been covered by the Kansas City Star. That's been covered by the New York Times. In fact, I think the writer for the Kansas City Star was Ian Cummings, if I'm not mistaken. The FBI runs terror plots. That's a fact. That's not conspiracy. That's an analysis of reality. So
Yep, and yet the guy will never go into, he says he looks into it, But did he ever once mention, or I will say this already, he will never mention once all the experiments that have been done, the fact that we see too far, and that is, let's face it, that is our number one argument, and it is a potent argument, because I'm sorry, refraction does not bring things up from behind the horizon in every single incidence. And, this is something that has been demonstrated over and over and over and over and over again ad nauseum. We all know it, right? But the debunkers will never, ever, ever go there unless they're going to just make up utterly ridiculous things like, Soundly and his Lake Pontchartrain bridge pictures, which is utterly ridiculous. But that's one thing. So what he's going to do here, now he's going to just go into a whole bunch of other stupid straw men and act like these are actually credible bits of evidence. He's even going to mention the fiber optic gyro that Rick Zimmerman bought, and we did our analysis, the whole behind the curve thing. Anyway, let's continue on.
As we do this, it's important to have credibility in what we're arguing. So let me give you some more facts or some more physics experiments that you can run yourself to know that the Earth is not flat, in case someone is trying to convince you that it is. One is that, of course, the flat Earth theory requires that there are no satellites. And so you might wonder, how do satellite dishes work?
Okay, first of all, come on. It does not require that there are no satellites. Obviously, there's something that's transmitting these signals. There's no doubt about that. But as we have demonstrated, and as our adversaries have shown us countless times, these satellites are being launched up on balloons. This is one technique that we know is in existence for a fact, Mike. And, we've even busted them dead to rights when they come down, after they've claimed that these certain satellites, like the Samsung satellite, was actually up in space doing selfies, right? And it turns out that it was a balloon, and then they tried to cover all that up. We've seen this time and time and time again. So no, the flat Earth theory does not require that there are no satellites, but it is obviously a premise, an assertion that these satellites are not 23,000 miles out into space. If they were, Mike, they would be able to actually give us a live shot of our Earth, of which there are none. And people would like to use the Himawari as a counterexample to that, which is just stupid, because you get a half-assed image about once every 30 minutes, if they happen to even give it up that often, when it's supposed to be something like 5 minutes. But again, why can we not get an image full-time, all the time? We have how many satellites that are 23,000 miles out there, and and that is far enough away, folks, to be able to get an entire picture of the Earth. Period. It is far enough away to do that. And yet we got nothing. We got nothing, Mike. What about that? Where's your logic in that? Yeah, we're never going to hear the answer to that. I'm sorry, Jeran?
I didn't say anything.
What happened? Oh, okay. You guys still there?
I'm here. Do you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I just had a really major glitch on OBS. It went, so, all right, let's continue on.
If the Earth is flat and there are no satellites. So obviously satellite dishes do function. And what you can do, I've heard, I think, some flat Earth theorists say that satellites are receiving, they say, ground signals somewhere. But what you can do is you can go out to your satellite dish. Maybe you're getting TV channels or you're getting bandwidth via satellite. And you can take that dish, if you dare, and you can just change the angle of that dish like 20 degrees. And what's going to happen is that dish is no longer going to point at the satellite in the sky in a geostationary orbit that's communicating with your dish. And you're going to lose your satellite TV. You're going to lose your bandwidth. And you're going to have to call somebody to come out and re-aim the dish. Well, why does the dish aim matter? And the reason is because there's a satellite out there orbiting the planet, and it's orbiting the planet at a distance that allows its orbit to have the same frequency as Earth's axis spinning, so that the satellite appears to be in a geostationary orbit. In other words, it doesn't move relative to the fixed outer surface of the Earth sphere itself.
This guy calls himself a scientist. The frequency has nothing to do with its orbit, Mike. My God. This guy is just completely talking out of his rear end. And yes, of course, if you block the source, it's kind of like saying if you take a laser and you shoot it at something, well, gee, if you put a big old trash can lid in front of the laser, it's obviously not going to get through. That doesn't mean that necessarily that signal is coming in from outer space or anything like that. And in fact, if I was just commenting this morning that if you look at most of the newer dishes, instead of being the round dishes, they are more the horizontally type based dishes where they are able to capture signals more from a left right or from an azimuth type of alignment than an elevation, right? Well, again, the reason for that clearly would be because in my mind, is because that those signals are coming from the ground. And even if they are coming from the sky, there are many other plausible explanations. One we know for a fact is our satellite balloons. Google Loon, look that up, Mike. And look at some of these things. And it's also possible that if there is a firmament, and by the way, I am also going to make an argument for that as to why I believe that there is a firmament. But if there is a firmament, it's also very likely that this firmament could bounce signals, especially if it is made of some sort of a hard glass type material. It is not too hard to really, get to that. So yeah, I'm sorry, Mike, but your weak ass proof of, well, if you put something in front of your satellite dish, it's going to cut it off, is hardly any proof that actual satellites are existing 23,000 miles out in space. And in fact, if they were really there, we would have so many images of the Earth from every conceivable angle. It would be incredible, but we don't, Mike. Why? Why, Mike?
And you know what? I remember in my youth. I am too old today. No, but when I was young, I used a lot of regular radios, and I remember trying to point somewhere with the antenna of the radio. Not because the signal is going to come from a satellite, is because you're trying to orientate towards some kind of big antenna or whatever. What I'm trying to point is, if you move a dish is functioning as antenna. So you are trying to reach certain kind of signal. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that it came from an outer space, 36,000 kilometers up there, going through all the atmospheric layers and without even scatter the signal, perfectly clear and reach your house. It's insane, trying to use that super indirect proof to say that the Earth is a sphere. It's completely ridiculous.
Yeah, it really is. And the other thing is, people will say, well, they have a hard time with that much bandwidth, coming from the satellites. It's like, hello, these are communication satellites. They're broadcasting hundreds of channels of video and audio, which take an immense amount of bandwidth. Why, Mike, cannot they take one single carrier and put a carrier of a single camera looking at the Earth? I mean, in comparison to the rest of the multiplexed bandwidth that is on that satellite, it's nothing. It should be the easiest thing in the world at a budget. And when I speak of budget, I'm talking about a bandwidth budget of virtually nothing, right? And a lot of people will come back and they say, well, DirecTV used to have that feed. It's like, I don't ever remember that, but do you guys remember that? Go ahead, Earl. I'm sorry.
No, can I make my only maybe share screen of today?
Sure, absolutely.
And this is just a tiny presentation, but not presentation. But I remember, for example, we have the Satan Satan dishes.
Oh man,
this is this is for real. But the thing is that, for example, a guy who lives in Colombia. A really long time ago, he sent me this video where this is the antenna where it's pointing the DirecTV, for example, and you have a lot of cases where the people show where the antenna is pointing to use DirecTV, and here is another one who are, pointing. For example, in this kind of town, when the lights go off from the grid, a lot of people, they don't receive any cell phone signal, direct TV signal, nothing like that. I know there is a lot of towers which is cell phone towers, but this is from Argentina, for example. ARSAT, this is straight, pointing 180 degrees,
Horizontal.
flat, horizontal.
Yeah.
Exactly. And anytime you have all these, in sometimes a lot of the dishes that are pointing a little up is because they are pointing a really high mountains antennas. So
That's right.
when you start, if you make like a trace, you're going to find that it's coming towards some kind of mountain thing, But I trying to find, there is a guy, maybe I don't, well, this is for example, this is at the ground level. This is a house of my friend in the ocean place in Argentina. So, and this antenna work perfectly, and you have a lot of houses in front of this antenna, of this antenna, and it's not pointing any kind of satellite dishes. Satellite out in space. So, I mean, you don't have any kind of direct proof with that. And I used to have a video that a guy in Mexico showing how you could use soda drink aluminum cup
Can.
Can.
and receive signal directly to your antenna. And
Yes.
I mean,
I've
it's
made
all
one of
pointing
those,
to
by the way.
antennas. Okay. But
Not to mention
it's all pointing to antennas. These kind of setups are working great. I mean, this is not the joke. I mean, you can use these kind of things to receive direct TV signals.
Right. And DirecTV has already announced that they're getting rid of dishes. So, I mean, why? Because they're going to deliver it all through the internet.
Exactly. And
Ago.
you know what? Yesterday, I downloaded this guy who is a pilot. It's a pilot from Mexico, and he's traveling from Mexico to United States, and it's in Spanish, so it doesn't matter the audio. But this guy, in some point of the video, he are telling that the radars on the ground, they know where he's flying because the airport has like 20 balloons with radars floating up in the sky detecting this kind of plane. Not
Interesting.
because satellite or because the actual antenna in the tower, not because they have 20 balloons surrounding certain area, certain perimeter of the of the sky to
That's
detect
interesting.
planes.
Because I used to work. I used to work in air traffic control radar. In fact, that's what I did in the Air Force. And of course, from the ground, you have the the rotating type of radar. You also have the vertical scan type of radar to verify that a plane is on the proper glide path and stuff like that. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out why they would even need something like that on balloons. That escapes me. First I've ever heard of it, Hiro.
Yeah, and this was sent by a follower of my Spanish channel, and I immediately downloaded because it was really, when this guy saying that we have like a line of satellite balloons up in the sky with radars detecting us and informing to the tower. Was I say, okay, I'm going to download this now because we're going to have a commercial pilot giving a speech in the Madrid conference. So these kind of things I want to share with that guy and see his opinion. But I'm going to stop sharing around now so you can continue.
Is he not worried about his job? Or is he retired or something?
I say to him that maybe he must be use some kind of glasses and hat, and then after the presentation, because it's going to be a short presentation. He's not going to say the earth is flat. He's going to present information to contrast, and then make your own conclusion. But of course, if you are together with the people that believe this, and you participate, giving information about how you has been training, that could be a risk situation. So I'm gonna saying to him that maybe he must be use a different cloth, and trying to cover a little bit the face, because a lot of people is going to be filming and taking picture and things like that, and I don't want to cause trouble to that guy.
Yeah,
But
'cause,
he
I mean,
offered himself. I am not asking to give a lecture.
yeah,
He's saying
that's
from you. Yeah.
that's just brave. That's all I could say. Because I mean, we all know what happened to
Yes,
Lydia
yes.
when she came on Globebusters and Mark Sargent. Boy, they came down hard on her, and it even got to the point where they were going to fire her unless we removed those videos. So I did. It's like I don't want to get anybody fired. And so did Mark. But yeah, I mean that did happen, and it was absurd. And she was a 737 pilot that worked for KLM, right, Jeran? I think that's what
Yeah,
it was.
KLM.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and also those microwaves that you had up on the towers, those are what I built when I worked for Western Telecommunications and also Pacific Telesis, Pactel out in California. So, I have a lot of experience with those things, and I'm telling you, there are other ways to emulate these signals. But the biggest point, really, that I want to, that I want Mr. Mike Adams to get is that, why, if we have these satellites that are wideband comm satellites, if they cannot put a single carrier of a lonely little video feed of Earth on there full time, 23,000 miles away is more than enough to get the entire Earth in frame, and then some. You could get the moon. You can get the moon. Well, probably not the moon, but when the moon's on the other side, you certainly could. So there's no excuse for us not having video feed live, real, all the time from space. There's no excuse, Mike. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. There we go.
The satellite appears to be in a fixed position in the sky. There's a certain distance from the planet at which that orbit can be achieved. I think it's 22,500 miles or something close to that. It's pretty far out there, which is why there's latency in your satellite dish communications. That's why, it's over 1 second latency, because that's the speed of the electromagnetic spectrum moving to that geostationary satellite.
Actually, the latency comes from the digital processing through the analog to digital conversion, or just the processing in the box. That's really where most of the latency comes from. It's the same thing that we get when we deal with YouTube and Hangouts and stuff, and why there's that latency. It's not because of these distances, it's because of the digital processing and the time that it takes to do that. Anyway, let's move forward.
So anyway, this is something you can test yourself. You can go out, you can move your satellite dish, or you can take an aluminum trash can lid and just cover your satellite dish. And guess what? Your bandwidth will cease.
Oh, freaking brilliant, Mike.
That satellite dish is actually talking to a satellite. And there are satellites in orbit around the Earth. And if there weren't, how does GPS work? How do you get GPS signals?
Wow.
Believe me.
Yeah. You want to start on that, Jeran?
We could go off forever. I mean, these are the things we've all talked about, and he's just looking up. I don't know if he searched the internet for his answers or whatever, but we've already discussed all these things, and we know how GPS works. And just like in Taboo Conspiracies video, when we learn about Marconi and what happened with sending signals across the Atlantic Ocean, he hasn't looked into any of these things yet, so he doesn't understand that they were sending signals across the ocean, and we're able to receive them. So it's very easy to get signals far distances, and it doesn't have to be from satellites orbiting the Earth.
Exactly.
Like balloons could be.
It's GPS is geoposition system. It's not referred to any global or satellite or nothing like that. I mean,
and it's just a modified version of Loran C. Really, I mean, and that's really all it actually is. And people say, well, you explain that. How does that work? Well, it's actually quite easy because it's not the system. Yeah, if GPS was actually the system that they said that it was, then yeah, there would be all kinds of interesting questions that would have to be asked as far as trying to disprove it. But we're saying that GPS, first of all, does not exist at all in the way that you've been told. It's a completely different system. It's a system that its predecessor and actually, current day called Loran C or C-Loran is in use. And even Loran C, these transmitters are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles apart. And they are depending on a synchronous signal between these sites that are hundreds of miles apart. And of course, we all know that as soon as you get 100 miles apart, you're talking about 6,666 feet of curvature, a mile and a third of curvature, essentially. So how is that Jeran working? Well, it would seem to me that if it was propagating through this ducting or atmospheric, which is far from stable, that would completely throw off any of the actual measurements that it's making. Therefore, it's not ducting. It is line of sight, and it is working exactly the way that it is said to work, because it is taking a direct line of sight path. Again, this is just somebody that knows nothing. He claims to be a scientist, and he really knows absolutely nothing. This is a guy that thinks that frequency, what he was saying earlier about frequency being these determinant factors when it's not. So anyway, all right, let's continue going on.
No, and I send you a picture just for that is the true GPS. It's involved all these techniques. Is not just 1, 2, 3, or bouncing into the ionosphere, whatever. That is why I believe they require so much money, to run the GPS, and it's one of the, supposedly in the history, is one of the biggest inversion in terms of monetary inversion in investment in the humankind, because you need to use, I don't say 100, but I mean a lot of things to cover. Especially nowadays, where it's not just some kind of military service, it's worldwide and for civilians and all over the place. So you need a lot of other technologies to really have GPS. That's
exactly.
my opinion.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. This is GPS using cell tower triangulation. That is absolutely correct. In fact, that triangulation is used for much more than just your position. The triangulation is also used in something that's called voting in between the cell sites that allows it to determine which site to actually hand your traffic off to, by the proximity to that site. So it's using it in a multitude of different ways. And it's absurd to think that this would be such a walk in the park with 8 or 10 different satellites whizzing around the Earth 23,000 miles away at 18,000 miles an hour. It's just ridiculous, and it just doesn't make any sense.
And after all, the GPS in your car and other device, they are still have that little voice saying recalculated recalculation. I don't know which is the name in English, but they use even like planes when travel when cross Atlantic, that they use like some kind of dead recognition, and because when you lose signal, the computer inside of the GPS is still calculating your last velocity, your last triangulation. You put the destin at the beginning, so you have all this math running in the back door without need to be in contact with the antenna. And when you reach an antenna, it's going to refresh and recalculate.
Yep, exactly. So anyway, lots of holes in their theory, and we can easily shoot more in. But let's move on and hear the rest of this nonsense. And then, guys, after this is done, then Mr. Well, we can use common sense, and we don't want to discredit ourselves by spouting utter bullshit. You're not even going to believe what he says after this. But let's continue on.
There are satellites, many satellites in orbit. Another thing that's obvious in all of this, you can buy a digital gyroscope, and if you have a gyroscope sitting on your desk, it will show a drift of 15 degrees per hour. Why? Why is it drifting 15 degrees per hour? Well, because the planet is rotating 360 degrees in 24 hours. And if you have a gyroscope, and I think some flat Earth group bought a very high-end digital gyroscope to test this, and they couldn't figure out why they had to recalibrate it every hour, because it kept drifting 15 degrees every hour. Actually, what they're doing is proving that the Earth is rotating underneath the gyroscope. And so that's something you...
All right. Obviously, I could do a book on this, but I will just briefly say that that group he is referring to, obviously, is when we reported on our observations with the fiber optic gyro that Rick Zimmerman bought, and of course have since now conclusively proven what that rotation actually is. Of course, he'll never go into that, just like the makers of Behind the Curve will never, ever, ever cover that part of it, or anybody else for that matter. And again, all I will say is that if that proved anything, then why didn't they make the claim well over 100 years ago for the Michelson-Gale experiment that also detected a 15 degree per hour rotation? Why? Because then they would have to explain Michelson-Morley, and they can't do that. Michelson-Morley did not register this forward velocity, linear velocity, around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour. So rather than have to deal with that, what they did is they simply eliminated the ether. But of course, nowadays, and since the Michelson-Morley experiment was repeated in the 80s by the U.S. Army Air Force, one of the two, they determined, oh, guess what? The ether does in fact exist. I have got a mountain of material on this, guys, that is showing this to be absolutely true and the case. So the ether is real. Not to mention the fact that without the ether, the Sagnac effect, which both the ring laser gyro and the fiber optic gyro work from, could not possibly work. It requires the ether because the ether is what sets the speed limit of the light propagation. It's as simple as that. All right, so I won't say any more about it than that, and we'll just move on.
You can buy even low-cost gyroscopes that plug into your cell phones and so on, and you can watch them. They'll drift 15 degrees per hour.
No, they don't.
Similar
He's
thing,
lying.
There are museums where you can see pendulums that are swinging,
Oh,
like
God.
multiple stories tall, like a 3-story tall cable, and a pendulum swinging back and forth in a museum. I saw one myself. I think it was in Chicago or Detroit a few years ago. And what happens is, as the Earth rotates underneath that pendulum, the axis on which the pendulum swings will appear to shift and rotate around the 360 degrees. This is because the Earth is spinning under.
Why doesn't that pendulum stop, Mike?
Yeah, exactly. And why do they have to keep tickling it essentially to keep that motion up?
Why can't you just hang the pendulum and then it should start spinning on its own? But unfortunately, you need to get it going, and then you need to have magnetic devices in it to keep it pushing along.
That's right. And the most absurd part of all of it, Jeran, the thing that really kills me, is it would be one thing to make that claim if the pivot point of the gyro was not attached to the Earth in any way, like if it was somehow floating up there, right? Then, I might be able to see how the Earth turning underneath it could be showing a Coriolis effect. But the problem is the foundation, the pivot point, all of that is all attached to the very same frame of reference that they're trying to differentiate from, right? How does that work? It's so stupid. And by the way, for those of you who are curious about Foucault's pendulum, Eyes to See, YouTuber Eyes to See, has been monitoring a lot of these Foucault pendulum sites, and lo and behold, they're not showing anything, and they are so unbelievably inaccurate. It's ridiculous. And then, of course, you've got what are some of the problems? What is it called? The Aulis effect? Not the Aulis effect.
Aulis. That's right. Oh no, it's now you got me too.
It's like that. I know. Crap.
Now I'm thinking Aulis, but that's not right.
I know. That's
the effect. I'll find it. Alias.
Elias effect. That's it. Jesus, Aulis, give me a break. All right. So you got the Elias effect, which, of course, is something that happens when you get certain celestial alignments, eclipses, etc. Completely throws these Foucault pendulums out. And not only that, they're not even remotely close at any point for any sustained length of time. And in order to keep them moving, they have to constantly keep nudging them. And of course, when they nudge them, obviously they're going to be nudging them in the direction of the alleged rotation. In other words, there's so many holes in it, it's utterly ridiculous. And for anybody to use that as an actual claim, a valid claim of Earth rotation, is just stupid. He also claimed, Oh, go
We
ahead.
went through the guide before. Remember, you could buy one of these machines for like $5,000 on Amazon, and we got a hold of the PDF instruction manual, and
Yep.
it basically tells you to set it, and then let it start swinging. If it goes in the wrong direction, then reset it, and then change a couple of the little fine-tuned parameters. And if you switch a bunch of knobs and you do enough work, well, then eventually you'll get it to coincide with where you're at, and then you can teach all your students. Well, come look at this great device that we have here that will prove that the Earth spins, but it didn't prove anything. You had to set it up, and you had to fine control everything until it perfectly matched where you're at.
Right, and hope you got lucky on one of them that it actually. And then, of course, like anything else, when it does match what they're saying, then it's like, oh, there it is. Okay,
Right.
But-
There's the proof.
yeah, they don't ever show all the other failures, right? It's like
course.
so dishonest.
Or spinning the wrong direction. Like, they'll never tell the children, oh, well, we started it 15 times and it keeps spinning the wrong direction, because all you have to do is, again, they have these little control knobs that are behind the glass case. Nobody ever gets to see them, and it teaches you how to dial in each one until eventually you get the exact rotation that you would expect at your location, and then you show that to children or put it in a museum, and people like Mike Adams claim it as fact. It's just sad.
Yeah, it really is. All right, let's keep going.
Underneath the pendulum. And in fact, these experiments have been carried out for hundreds of years. It was one of the first proofs that the Earth was rotating, that the Earth was a sphere. And it's also
Which just goes to show you how freaking weak their proofs are if they're actually trying to cite these as proofs. Man,
Well,
those are pathetic.
The hundreds of years ago he's talking about is the 1800s, I'm assuming. And, why is it that Einstein came out in the early 1900s? It told us that there is no Earth experiment that can prove that the Earth moves. So if it's as simple as the Foucault pendulum, then believe me, that would be their proof. That would be Einstein. He would say, oh, no, there's proof that the Earth moves. It's called the Foucault pendulum.
Mm-hmm. As would the Michelson-Gale experiment be cited ad nauseum as proof.
Right.
But what do they cite? Oh, there's a couple flat earthers that got a gyro, and that's our proof. And I still haven't gotten my freaking Nobel Prize yet. So
Me neither. Don't worry, you're not alone. But
jerks.
again, if the directors of that movie ever want to release all the footage from my experiment, then that would be great. And I promise you and guarantee you that they will never release it, not because of some stupid contract, which again makes no sense. If you ever believe any of that nonsense that, oh, Jeran, sorry, we promised you all this extra footage and we can't give it to you now because Netflix, sorry if I said DirecTV, Netflix stated in our contract that we can't give out footage. Like, what are you talking about? The other footage that didn't make it into the movie, Netflix is going to tell you can't release that other footage? Bullshit. Why won't you release it? Because I'd be able to easily show you all the experiments we did that night, everybody walking away saying nothing was proven, showing that they took a little clip of me saying interesting out of context and placed it at the end of their movie. I'd be able to prove all that if they ever release and if they want to prove me wrong, do it. If they want to prove me wrong, release all the extra footage and show everything that happened. And when I'm shown wrong, I'll shut down my channel. But they can't do it. They never will. Of course, why? Because it proves that their movie was nothing more than that, a movie.
And that they're liars, and that they're absolute liars. It's just exactly. Like
they even went and changed their stance. Remember, their stance was, oh, we're going to be pro flat Earth. We're going to do this. And then they had to come up with a reason why they changed it and say, oh, it's because you guys are talking about flat Earth to children. And therefore, we had to take a different stand and we had to show that, flat Earth is wrong or whatever. But again, these guys acted like your best friend, acted like they're going, oh, no, we're in the up and up. We wouldn't show. And I even asked them, I was apologizing to them after those tests. Apologizing, saying, man, I'm really sorry that you guys flew out here and nothing was shown, nothing was proven. Would I be saying that? Would I be apologizing if things were shown or things were proven? Again, you'll have to talk to, some of the 20-some people that were there, Globers included, that all walked away and said, well, nothing was proven here. We just saw a bunch of nonsense, really, because the test didn't work out the way we planned.
Yeah, because the laser got fused to the columnator.
That was the first time, and then the second time was just realizing how difficult it was to do such a distance, and to keep a beam diameter. But again, if there's somebody out there that wants to repeat that experiment and actually purchase the kind of laser that would be needed to do it, there is lasers out there that claim that they'll be able to do it. They are $4,000 or $8,000. I don't have that money, and I'm certainly not going to get one and then go out there in the field and find out that it doesn't do what we need it to do, which is keep a 6-inch or less beam divergence. But again, for people like Mike Adams, these people that have tons of money, or Anthony Cumia, who said he's got $1 million to offer flat earthers we'll do these tests, go out and replicate some of the stuff that we're saying we can do with the money that you supposedly had. We don't have that fund. Sorry.
Yep, exactly. So, all right, hang on a second. Let me, I'm just checking something really quick. All right. Okay, let's get back to it. All right, back to Mr. Adams.
What's interesting is the speed of the rotation of the pendulum axis depends on the latitude of the location of that pendulum relative to the equator, which
No, it depends.
Actually makes perfect sense when you can.
I'm sorry, no, it depends on what?
Sorry, I said no, it depends on the fine-tuning dial. You have to turn the fine-tuning dial until it matches yours. So it's not, again, this is a way. Imagine that you set up some device and you dial it in perfectly till it's doing what it's supposed to do at that location, and then you pass that off as being proof. Well, look at this. Well, no, you fine-tuned it. You got it there. So when he's just saying, he's acting like you can just hang a pendulum in any place and start it swinging and it will do exactly what they're talking about, and that's just simply not true.
Yeah, just like you would also need to know your latitude for your Coriolis calculations, just like you would also need to know your latitude for the fiber optic gyro, right, to do what it does. But no, he doesn't mention any of that. This guy's no scientist. He's a clown. Let's continue.
When you consider the angular momentum and how it varies based on your distance from the equator, because you're spinning the fastest at the equator, and you're spinning not quite as fast when you're in a more northern latitude or a southern latitude, because the circle that you're making is smaller. Anyway, you can look up pendulums in science and the spherical Earth and so on. You can go see these pendulums yourself. Believe me, they're not faked. I've seen them with my own eyes. I've also flown in jets in the co-pilot seat. I'm a trained pilot, checked out in Cessnas, not jets, but I was lucky enough to sit in the co-pilot seat of a private jet at one point, and you can see the curvature of the Earth out in front of you. And I've heard flat earthers say that when you're a passenger in a jet and you're looking out the window and the Earth looks curved, they say, well, that's because the window is kind of a lens, because the windows are thick, the plexiglass is curved, and it creates the illusion of a curved Earth. Well, I'm here to tell you, if you sit in the pilot seat of a jet, there is no distortion in the cockpit glass, the plexiglass, the windows. It's designed to give you clarity. Otherwise, pilots would be running into each other all over the tarmac, if there were distortions in that. You get a clear view of what you're seeing. Otherwise, you couldn't fly. And when you're sitting up there in the front of the airplane, and there are thousands of pilots around the world who can testify to this, you get up to a high enough altitude, above 39,000 feet typically, you can really start to see the curvature of the Earth. It's not fabricated, it's physics. And also,
Yeah, it's not fabricated, it's physics. Okay. Well, let's get an opposing view on that. And we're going to prove everything he just said was dead wrong by a simple test that was done by P-Brain. And let's just play a couple minutes of this, and we're going to see where Mike is completely full of crap. So here we go.
Hello, everybody. P-Brain here. Just have to respond to this Wolfie 6020. He's been putting these videos up like this from his airplane. He's a pilot or something, and he keeps showing how the horizon is down, should be up here, but it's down here. And he's pointing out, oh, look at this little curvature. And so I have a few things to say about that, and a couple experiments and some photos, and to refute this. All right?
All right, so let's
similar in orientation to an airplane windshield, to show that it distorts what you see through it, and that distortion causes the horizon to visually drop. So here we go. Okay, I use this lid to show that there's some distortion in the glass, right? And I'll show you from my car also. But this is a lid, and it's got the concave side facing me. It's slanted at an angle that would represent something like a windshield on an aircraft. It's a very oblique angle, more acute than that, pretty tight angle. Obviously they can't have stuff hitting the windshield, and they're curved. And so this lid represents just to show that a concave window or glass will lower the horizon like that. And you can also see that it's curved. You see that? Slight kind of curving. And it wouldn't look too dissimilar from his thing here with the slight
let's
few
jump forward.
images. Here's an airplane. And as we look through right over here, you can see the wall get chopped up and distorted in the glass. Then we move here. We see a poor bird got hit here. But as we look through this glass up here, we see the distorted, I guess it's this thing being distorted like this. Very bad distortion. Here also, we look at this building. We can see it totally dropped lower and moved to the left, right? Another big distortion and curved. Here, if we look through this window, we can see this hallway here being cut down in half, again, lowered and shifted and curved again. Here is my car window, and I this is a metal broomstick, and this is me with the door open. So this is open air. I'm looking right at it through no glass right here, no glass here, but here's my windshield, and you can see that the broom drops down, and there's a straight line across them. So clearly, even in a car, and now a car is not as slanted as much as the airplane window, and yet you get a nice drop in the horizon right there, right? So basically, that's it. Just wanted to cover that because he keeps putting up these videos and showing.
Okay, and this will be in the show notes, guys, but essentially what we just saw here is proof positive that not only do the windshields of your car, but as on an aircraft, anything like that, not only do they drop the horizon line, which is pretty interesting, right? Because they will also say, well, the horizon is being dropped, and as they're looking through the glass, and clearly, yeah, if you do that, yes, the horizon line does drop, but we've also seen that it clearly adds a concavity. In other words, it bends it. Just exactly like what Mike Adams is saying does not happen. So sorry, Mike, you lose again. You're just wrong. All right, so let's continue on.
I've got a large list of different ideas here. For example, you live in the Northern Hemisphere. Maybe you have a friend who lives in the Southern Hemisphere. You call your friend, guess what? They will see different stars than you see. You're looking at, the Northern Hemisphere stars, they're looking at the Southern Cross. Well, why is that? How can that be if the Earth is flat? Wouldn't we all be looking at the same stars? If the Earth was flat, we'd have the same sky. But we.
Again, somebody that's done no research whatsoever and does not understand that stars are close and local in the flat Earth model. And yeah, if they were truly 93 million miles away, or 93 million miles, 93 million light years away, or just light years away, like the heliocentric model proposes, if that was actually true, then yeah, we would have exactly the same stars. But we don't, because in our model, they are close and local. But he, again, like every ignoramus that tries to debunk flat Earth theory, they don't even understand what they're trying to debunk. It's just really pathetic. Let's move on.
We don't. We have different skies. And there's so many examples of this. For example, the kind of eclipse where the sun shines light and the Earth casts a shadow on the moon. It covers up the whole moon. The moon turns dark because of the shadow of the Earth. What's the shape of that shadow? It's circular. It's spherical. And the moon itself, the shadow when light is cast on it from the side, is spherical. So if the flat Earth theory says that the sun and the moon are on the same side of the Earth, so how could the sun cast a shadow of the Earth on the moon unless the sun was on the opposite side of the planet? You see? So there are 1,000 different ways that you can obviously point out that the Earth is not flat. The Earth is a sphere. There are satellites that orbit the Earth. The moon is one of those satellites.
How indeed can it so yeah, if they're on the same side, meaning that took me a second to get what he was trying to say. Yeah, on the same side as far as them being directly above us, if that's what you want to call them being on the same side, top side, yeah, that's actually true. Now, as far as a lunar eclipse, as far as a solar eclipse, even though I personally have problems with that, there are flat earthers that will say, well, yeah, that's obvious. It's just the moon going in front of the sun. I personally have issues with that, but we're not going to go into that today. There are definitely other takes on that. But as far as lunar eclipses, yeah, there's definitely an issue there that a lot of people have a hard time grasping. But this is where we get into the concept of what the ancients knew and were very much well aware of. And it's not just, one particular culture. It's virtually every culture knew about these black bodies or dark bodies, other bodies that appear to be up there, called Rahu and Ketu. And of course, Rahu and Ketu could also be nodal points. In other words, that's an area that, yeah, we are not entirely sure of. But then again, does he bother to debunk the heliocentric model of Selenelians? Why do Selenelians eclipse? It sure as hell is not because it's refracting that much, that greatly, or the fact that the Earth shadow comes in from the wrong direction. There are so many things wrong, even with the model of eclipses for the heliocentric, but no, he's never going to even address that or touch on that. So granted, yeah, we may not have a really great answer for that, but you also have a stupid answer for your Selenelian eclipse explanation, one that frankly does not work at all. So let's move on.
By the way, the moon is the same size no matter where it is, which means it's roughly the same distance from the Earth.
All right, and that's totally not true.
Right.
When you look at the moon rising, when it's on the horizon, it's obviously much, much larger. Why is that? Well, probably because of the magnification effects of the moon on the horizon. It does actually change size. So does the sun. We've had Chris Van Maitre that has gone out with a solar filter and done precision measurements. We can actually see this happening. And one thing that I find very interesting is whenever anybody sends up a high altitude balloon, and Dwayne Callum has tons of footage of this, but when you get up and you actually see the moon from a high altitude balloon, it's tiny. It's absolutely itty bitty, right? So to make such an audacious claim that the moon retains its size under every condition all the time is patently ridiculous and so easily disprovable. That it's crazy. All right, let's move on.
Flat Earth theory says that the moon is close to you when it's directly above you, and then it's farther away from you when it goes to the horizon and appears to disappear. But that's not true. You can take a rifle scope and you can look at the moon and you can count the number of mils that is the width of the moon, and it's the same at any time of the night.
That's just a straight up
lie. The moon's on
lie.
the horizon or up in the sky, the moon is always roughly the same distance from the Earth, and you can prove that with a rifle scope. So there are all kinds of ways that you can tell the Earth is a sphere.
Wrong.
So flat Earth theory kind of doesn't really check out, but it's an interesting idea, just not reality. We'll be back with one more final thought. Stay with us.
Okay, so his final thought is Alex selling boner pills. So we won't listen to that.
At least everybody at InfoWars is not as brain dead as Adams. There's some decent people there.
Yeah, Greg Reese is pretty good.
There you go. Yeah.
Yep, Greg Reese is pretty good. So, all right. Now, guys, here we have Mr. Adams, and this is going to blow you away. And I'll just kind of give you a spoiler alert here. Mr. Adams, first of all, you guys have heard us talking about, in the press lately, there's been a lot of articles about several hundred stars appear to be missing, right? Well, may be true, may not be true. I don't know. There's definitely something happening as far as I'm concerned. The magnetic poles do appear to be shifting. They're having to renumber aircraft runways, with respect to north. They're changing. It's definitely changing. It's accelerating. We're getting all kinds of data that is changing as far as our magnetic makeup, which, in the flat Earth model, at least in my opinion, is all part of what the stars are all part of this grid. You also have like a biblical point of view, which states about, how the stars begin to fall from the skies, right, in the end days, et cetera, whatever. So I don't know if you could equate the stars disappearing with them falling from the skies, but I suppose that is not too far of a leap of logic to be able to say that. But regardless, so let's assume that actually is true, all right, that these things are happening, and I think there's a good possibility that it may be happening. But what Mike Adams is, Mr. Let's use our normal science to prove this, is going to assert, guys, is that it's little aliens that are coming and they're building these things called Dyson spheres. And they are stealing the stars. They're like abducting our stars inside of Dyson spheres. And that's actually what's happening to them. And then he goes and he tries to prove this with stupid things like, oh, well, we've invented antimatter, and we know exactly it takes 1 gram of antimatter to get to Jupiter, blah, 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 blah. Stuff that is ultimately just ridiculous. And by the way, for those of you that do not know what a Dyson sphere is, you're going to love this. So it's a theoretical construct made by Leon Dyson. I can't remember Dyson's first name, but anyway, this guy Dyson, is a physicist, said that well, what a Dyson sphere is a construct that completely surrounds a star, either partially, like on one axis, or completely all the way around, like a sphere around it, right? That completely surrounds and harnesses a star's energy, right? Well, I want you guys to think for a minute. And by the way, he says we're only 60 years away from this. Now, I want you guys to think about for 1 second, if it was just our sun, which our sun is claimed to be an average-sized star, if we were to surround that, right? First of all, if 1 million Earths can fit inside of the sun, how many Earths do you suppose it would take for the raw materials to just be able to build a Dyson sphere? Tens, trillions, just to get the raw material? It's ridiculous, but that's what a Dyson sphere is. But he's going to go into this like it's actually for real. So let's actually get into that and hear what he says. Oops.
Has more mysteries than we're being allowed to even ask about. And that's the point of this story, is not to say, hey, stars are disappearing. What's going on? What's happened with these stars? Could there be non-Earth entities harvesting them? Yeah, maybe. But how could we be the only living creatures in this entire cosmos? How could we be? A universe created.
Now look what he's got here, providing yet more evidence of alien civilizations harvesting stars to generate antimatter fuel. How is this providing evidence for that? And this is his Natural News. Oh my God.
It's a psyop to discredit other research.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's just scary. Let's keep going.
By God. Wouldn't God want to populate the whole universe with life? Wouldn't there be life all over the place? All right, final segment today.
This video should be banned.
Hey, I want to mention, by the way, there's a petition out there for President Trump to pardon Roger. Time, Julian Assange is being, and they'll find ways to kill you, and it is inhumane in the sky. According to new research, they've been, and I said, yeah, I'm happy to. 100 stars have vanished from the sky. According to new research, they've been comparing the astronomy photographs of the sky from 50 years ago to today, and they found 100 stars have vanished. Now, of course, given the speed of light, it means those stars actually vanished perhaps thousands of years ago, or even tens of thousands of years ago. The diameter of the Milky Way is about 120,000 light years. So it would take light, of course, 120,000 years to traverse the full diameter of the spiral arms.
Of course, the inverse square now doesn't apply.
In the Milky Way,
it's going to keep going forever.
Potentially, they could look like stars, but actually be other galaxies that have vanished. But something's vanishing out there in the sky. Lots of stars. Statistically, this should not be happening. So this is baffling scientists, and in fact, the authors of this particular study said that they had no explanation, but they thought it must be some natural explanation. I want to offer you today something a little outside the box. And you might agree, you might disagree. That's fine. I encourage you to think. But there is another explanation for all of this, and that is that non-Earth civilizations are harvesting stars using what are called Dyson spheres. And this is actually mainstream science, believe it or not. There are scientists working with NASA on new propulsion systems that use antimatter fuel to bend space-time, creating like a warp bubble around a ship so that.
Okay, so how do you use antimatter fuel to bend space-time? How does that work, right? I mean, first of all, there's no such thing as antimatter fuel.
Show me space-time.
Yeah, and show us space-time. But this is mainstream physics, and of course, we're going to be able to do all this within 60 years, right? Ay, caramba! Oh my God! And he says that we're trying to discredit the truth movement. Oh my God!
That ship can travel faster than the speed of light, or appear to. It's bending space. It's not actually exceeding the speed of light in normal space. It's bending space and then moving through that bent space, achieving apparent speeds faster than the speed of light. But to do this requires a tremendous amount of energy that must be projected. Essentially, you're distorting gravity, you're distorting space-time. And this is something that's being talked about even by mainstream scientists. NASA, again, is researching this. And this technology will come into existence on Earth within the next 50 to 60 years, according to mainstream scientists. And just
really?
It's great to put out, long enough that you won't be around, too.
Yeah.
I mean, I could just say something that I say, well, and this will be coming true within the next 75 to 80 years. So you better believe me, because you'll never be able to call me out as being completely and totally wrong.
That's right. I'll be dead.
8 years, I'll be here.
And likely so will all of you.
This is the same guy that's told us that they're terraforming the Earth, that we're being prepared for a post-human era where we're being mass poisoned, indoctrinated, and we're driven to cultural suicide, all because aliens basically want the planet Earth, but it's too warm for them. So they're going to make it colder, and they're going to collapse plant life, and they're going to dim sunlight. And that all these things that are being done by the government is not being done by people who are just psychopaths and basically have, but it's being done on behalf of these aliens, because these aliens are so impressive. They can travel across the universe. They can fold naked, of course, as Jeran will tell us. They don't need clothes. They don't need reproductive organs. They basically throw up and other beings come out, and they live forever, and they can travel at speeds that we could never even fathom. But these aliens, they need our help with our little airplanes to spray the skies and to get rid of the land and make the planet colder. This is what he thinks. And then the aliens are just going to take over, like they are using us as little pawns. It's so ridiculous. It's such a nonsense story that if any aliens existed that had any kind of technology, even 1,000 years beyond ours, 500 years beyond ours, believe me, they would not need humans to take care of their little business. They could come here and do whatever they wanted.
Exactly, man. And in fact, it's the same, the story repeats itself in every minute, because if you go 30, 40 years ago, you're going to read on the news that in 20 years, we're going to have colonies in the moon, we're going to travel to Jupiter, etc., etc. And it never happens that. But this thing about moving the solar system with this kind of idea, come on.
Yeah, pretty crazy. All right. Well, let's see what other nonsense he can spew out here. Yes, it's endless.
It takes a little over 1 gram of antimatter to propel a ship from Earth to Jupiter.
Wow, that's amazing, Mike. How did you figure that out?
Because he puts in his nose. Yeah.
Yeah. He put a gram of something up his nose. That's right.
Yeah, no, it's the idea of Futurama. The tiny. I can't remember the name. This tiny biological black bean that make poo, and that was the most efficient combustion in the universe. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but the guys who are fan of Futurama, they know what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah, I'm unfamiliar with it, but yeah, no doubt. All right, let's keep going.
Yeah, antimatter is very potent fuel. And of course, there's research ongoing. You can create antimatter right here on Earth. They've done it. They've created small amounts of antimatter. It takes an enormous amount of energy. It actually takes 1 billion times more energy to go into it than is released by it. But the military wants it for a weapon system. NASA wants it as a propulsion system to allow humanity to travel to the stars. But if you had a non-Earth civilization that was millions of years more advanced than we were, what would be their energy source? Would they burn coal? No. Would they use windmills? No. They would harvest stars.
Oh, come on. They'd use naquita and dilithium crystals.
No. They're going to use the power of love. Okay? They're going to ban love and use that as propulsion,
Then you can travel through it. Really.
Yeah, of course, man.
Antimatter, it's just it's the same stuff that we talked about on the Friday Lounge with the atoms and everything else. Antimatter is science fiction. It's from Star Trek and it's from books, but it's not real. And you can say that they've created some. Of course, if you go look that up, wherever they created antimatter, you'll get a few people who say maybe that there was one little speck created in the the CERN, whatever that thing is called, the CERN
The particle accelerator. Yes, that's exactly. And they made this claim initially back in the late 70s, early 80s, where, as a byproduct of the Star Wars program, right? That they were able to, using these particle accelerators, that they were then able to mass produce antimatter, right? But that turned out to be an utter load of crap.
Right, of course. And this is all part of the Big Bang idea, right? That if all this matter had to be produced, then there had to be antimatter.
Yep,
and it's true. You can even find scientific websites that will tell you there's no such thing. It's just not true. So it depends on where you're looking to get that, but that's the kind of space travel, alien, that's that kind of talk. So if you go in that direction, you'll find people say it does exist. If you try and go mainstream science, they'll tell you it doesn't exist. But it's not because they're hiding anything. It's because it's never been shown. Just show it. But again, it's just all theoretical. And, a lot of these theoretical physicists may believe that they've created that in the CERN particle accelerator and that they send things at nearly the speed of light. And again, people want to believe that. They can go right ahead. I'll bow out. I'll say thank you.
Yep, exactly. All right, let's move on.
But harvest quasars and pulsars and magnetars and maybe even black holes, which
and
are
retards.
It would harvest stars because that's an obvious source of energy. It's like oil wells spread around the cosmos. And I think we need to consider the possibility that these stars are disappearing because they are being consumed. They're being turned into antimatter fuel by civilizations that are millions of years more advanced than we are. The Drake equation, mainstream science, yet again. How many other intelligent civilizations are there in our Milky Way galaxy alone, not even to consider other galaxies? Hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy. According to the Drake equation, that means there must be tens.
Just pause that real quick and just think about what he's saying. Think of how far human technology has come in 100 years. Think about that. And then he's talking about civilizations that are millions of years advanced to us. And then he's the same guy who's telling everybody that these aliens have been in contact with our government and that's the reason we're doing these terraforming is to get the planet ready for aliens. Like they would need humans at all. It's so ridiculous. They would just be able to come and grow their hands and do whatever they wanted with the earth. It's just so stupid to have people buy into this stuff. But again, it's a great story. People have seen enough science fiction. They've watched Avatar enough. Maybe they start to believe this stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, it's utterly ridiculous. All right, keep going, Mikey. You're giving us some good entertainment here.
Tens of thousands of intelligent civilizations. And by the way, as a tangent, is 2020 the year that there will be disclosure?
No.
I mean, the name.
Yeah, 2020, it'll be the year of maybe the fake alien invasion. I'd say that's a good possibility. But who knows?
Yeah, who's going to tell it? The internet and the journalists that are going to come forward and tell us that there's been this, this big reveal, who you've already told us are CIA puppets. His story gets a little confusing. It's hard to follow exactly who we can trust and who we can go to here. The government's with the aliens, but trust them when it comes to science and trust journalists, some journalists, not the CIA puppets. It gets a little bit difficult to follow along with what he's telling us to do here.
Yep. And he sits there with a straight face saying this stuff. It's like, well, I'm gonna propose this, as actually what's happening. But flat earthers are ridiculous.
Right.
Now about contact with craft caught on video in military planes, craft that maneuver in ways that are impossible using human technology. But those maneuvers are entirely possible using space distortion systems, gravity projection systems using antimatter fuel. That fuel can be made by harvesting stars. So
about 50 years ago, in New Mexico.
He's talking about the video where you see in the screen of a military plane, like a black shape that is not recognizable. I mean, a black dot in the middle of a screen and a voice supposedly from a pilot saying, "Oh, look at that turn."
Yeah,
it's moving faster than I've ever seen anything.
Yeah,
exactly,
just like,
man. I mean, the blue bin is behind the militaries and NASA, and suddenly appears all these military guys, saying that and blah blah blah. I mean, come on.
I know. I used to have a lot of respect for Mike Adams, as the health ranger and all this stuff, and maybe
Well,
his work in that is still good.
Yeah, he
But-
does good work. I mean, that's the sad thing about some of the stuff is that we're not taking him down completely. But somebody like this that's done great work, I would think that he'd come to, he would have to reach conclusions sometimes that, hey, just because I don't believe something right off the bat doesn't mean that it's not true. I mean, he believes the vaccines are harmful. He believes a lot of the same things that we believe. But when it comes to flat Earth, just a lot of people don't want to take that step. And I guess I understand why. I mean, but I think he does. I think he's doing a good thing, to be honest. I really don't think that this hurts flat Earth or anything. I think the more you talk about it, even if somebody were like this were to get on NBC and do a show on it, or CBS and do a news article on it, or whatever. When these guys do that, all they're getting people to do is look into it, to take it in, and that's all that I've ever asked. That people start researching this, do the research themselves, look into it, and if you're like him and you come to that conclusion, then what am I going to do besides maybe laugh at you? But that's the direction he wants to go. I think in the end he'll be shown to be quite wrong. But I think a lot of these people just can't take that leap. They can't do that because you'll be immediately ostracized, and you'll be told you can't go on certain shows or told you can't talk about certain things, and he just doesn't want to be one of those. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's just say that my opinion of his work has been tainted by his utterly ludicrous assertions. Just like he's saying what's happening with, so
that's that. Like, oh, great. Okay. So vaccines are bad and aliens are coming. So it's like, okay, well,
Yes.
That's where I say the good and leave the bad. I'll agree with you that vaccines are harmful, and I will disagree that aliens are coming and terraforming the planet and taking away stars and using them for antimatter fuel devices.
Yep. Exactly. Okay, just a couple more minutes of this and then we're done with it.
Is it possible? And I'm just asking what if. I'm not saying for certain this is exactly what's happening. Perhaps there's another explanation. But is it also possible that stars are being harvested because there are non-Earth civilizations out there that have very advanced technology that are moving at faster than the speed of light, that are colonizing our galaxy and perhaps other galaxies? I think this is the year we need to seriously consider that, because there's been a lot of talk about, hey, is this the year that Trump's going to tell the truth about Area 51?
Yeah. Narnia 2020, that's all I can say. And that's the same thing. Well, we might as well just talk about, purple unicorns in Narnia, as Nathan is so fond of saying stuff like that. And it's really,
Will this era of disclosure of purple unicorns? Could be.
Yeah.
Could be, yeah. It's the same thing as the Vatican. The Area 51 and the Vatican, the library from the Vatican, that are the most secret place beyond Antarctica. But it's the same history. I remember a news from you guys from the United States in the mass media news telling that the military industry is paying supposedly employers that work in the Area 51, but in really doesn't exist. So you are paying like 40 salaries to people that doesn't exist, that supposedly work underground in the Area 51. So I like the idea that they put everything, they hide everything. You have a few bases and you few hangars and a warehouse and maybe some kind of basement in Area 51, but the nice thing, the real thing is 14 floors under the ground. Come on and check it.
Yeah. Absolutely true. All right. Well, anyway, so much for Mike Adams. And, obviously you can see why I was going crazy when I was watching that. Because, this is a guy that Alex Jones brought in to debunk flat earthers, and then he goes off on tangents like that, which, wow. I mean, I don't even know what to say about stuff like that. Anyway, okay, so I wanted to give you guys an update on the bobwins.com AE map that one of the viewers is developing. Is pretty cool. He's getting it better all the time. He's got, like I said, the magnetic flux lines in here, which are really cool. You can see what's actually going on with the magnetic fields, the intensity, the rotation of it. And again, isn't it interesting that even the rotation of it is matching a flat Earth much better than anything that a globe Earth could ever possibly come with. He has finally added in the ocean currents now. So they're actually in there. So he's got the ocean currents that are in there, and of course the wind at all kinds of different elevations. So he's doing a great job on it. And again, it's at bobwins.com. I'm not sure why he called it Bob Wins, other than the fact that I heavily encouraged him to do it. And he also put little links down here to Globebusters and Jeranism, which is really cool. So, hat tip to him, and thanks for doing that. That's really beautiful. So it's getting more and more. He is ultimately, I'm pretty sure, going to put a full-blown Earth, normal Earth, globe Earth in there so that we can flip back and forth for comparison. But, when you look at stuff like this and you see how well the air currents, the magnetic flux currents, the ocean currents work on a flat Earth, and they're not all jumbled around and, making no sense whatsoever like they do on a globe. Again, this is exactly why Null School took this projection out, because this is a dangerous projection. And the fact that he's added the magnetic flux to it just makes it even that much more dangerous. So it's an awesome thing, and I'm just glad that we've got it back. So cool. All right. All right. So did you guys get a chance to watch this movie at all, The American Moon?
I have not.
Okay. Well, you haven't got it? Okay. Well, it'll be in the show links. But this American Moon, this was released October 15th, and it's funny because right in the very beginning they warn flat earthers not to mirror it. Essentially, oopsie. Let me put that back up. And because and I have to say that it is an outstanding documentary, but I just thought it was funny that in particular the so-called flat earthers are warned against using any of this material in their own videos. So yeah, I'm not going to play it. I'm just going to put it here. But I will say that this particular video is the reason why you get headlines like stuff like this. This was actually a few years back, back in 2016. 52% of Brits don't believe it really happened. I'm sure that number is increasing every single day between movies like this and sites like Allus. But if you guys have not seen this, it is called American Moon. The show link will be in the show notes for this. And this is absolutely the best moon landing debunking video I have seen, hands down, because what it does is it takes the rebuttals of the people that are rebutting the original assertions, and it rebuts them beautifully, and it does so by bringing in some of the world's best photographers, lighting experts, not just the PhDs that have degrees in it, but people that actually are world famous and world renowned for their work in it in the field. So yeah, it's just something that I want you guys to see. It's 3.5 hours long, so definitely you want to set aside an evening for it. But wow, what a great movie this actually is. So I'm sure you guys will really be thrilled when you guys finally watch it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. Very cool. All right. So what else?
What do you?
Nothing.
Oh.
All right. All right. So another thing that was in the news, when was it? December 30th, this came out. And this has been being seen over Denver. These weird things. Now, the headline is, mysterious swarms of giant drones have started to appear in the Colorado and Nebraska night sky, and nobody knows where they're coming from. Now, it's interesting that they say that they're drones, right? As if they know what they are. They really have no clue what they are, but they go so far as to show things like this, and they want people to believe that these are drones. Now, again, this type of reporting is designed specifically for people to do exactly like what we're doing right now, and that is say, oh, come on, that's stupid. There's no way that these are actually drones. And I would agree with that. I don't believe they're drones at all. I don't know what they are, but I don't think they're drones. What they're hoping for is for people to say, here's the government. They're making stupid statements like these are drones, when in fact what they have to be is they have to be little aliens from other world that have come here, and of course they want to harvest our sun star, right? That's got to be what they're doing, and stupid things like that. in other words, they're trying again to cement this belief in ETs that are out there, that are coming from, thousands of light years away, that they do exist, that space exists, this whole 9 yards. This is the agenda. This is the reason for these type of articles. But, I don't know what they are. It could be something from Bluebeam, but it's just so absurd that they automatically jump to, oh, well, these are these drones. That's what it is. They're drones. It's kind of like the last time, what'd they say they were? Seagulls? That they made the claim? Yeah. Utterly ridiculous. And so what this is telling me, I think, is that we're getting very close to this, fake alien invasion. I think that Werner von Braun, warned Dr. Carol Rosin about. And, where it goes from there, your guess is as good as mine. But you guys have any idea what the, the further agenda for this might be?
For me, it's the Messiah agenda, because when you read the NASA Bluebeam project, is not based on they are talking about that they're going to create this fake alien invasion, but the ultimate goal is to unify the religion and the economic system and everything under a new Messiah, and that is at least what is said in the paper. Maybe they change the plans, or maybe they change the strategy, whatever, but the final goal is this establishment of the real New World Order. That is why they are creating this, because as you can see in the speech that the presidents and all these kind of scientists, mainstream scientists, do, is about talking about that we need some external threats to unify the complete world. So it's for me the ultimate goal of all this NASA Bluebeam project.
Yeah, I agree. This is, it's certainly not to actually disclose anything real to us. I mean, the lie, their agenda is and always has been that no matter what comes to us, it is a lie. And of that's one thing I am absolutely certain of. The entire satanic agenda is to reverse everything, flip it upside down, make it backwards. Black is white, white is black, up is down, down is up. Nothing actually has any coherency. And of course, this makes people, think, well, they don't know what to believe. They have no idea what to believe. So then, they're even more inclined to, if they're like most people, they're more inclined to then look to the government for these answers, because they just don't know what to think, with all this craziness out there on the internet. But again, they're counting on people not thinking for themselves and not being able to critically analyze what's going on with these little plays, these little fake things that they put out, for us to digest. So I agree with you, Eero. It's there's definitely a much larger agenda to this. But it sure as hell is not a bunch of drones that somebody just decided to fly in our night skies. That's just stupid. So anyway, okay, guys. Let's see. I guess one other thing I do want to mention is we did kind of pick up a sponsor by this guy. A lot of you guys may know David Gordon. And David Gordon he is the originator, inventor of the Gordon rocket stove. And I got to tell you guys, we got one of these. I actually got one from David, bought one from him a couple weeks ago, and we've been cooking on it, and it's really good. The food that's on it is really, really good. We also tried it while we were out in Dallas, and it's just really super good stuff. So he does have a Facebook page on Facebook for Gordon Rocket Company if you want to check it out. Something, like I said, I totally recommend it. It's really good cooker. It will be part of not only my camping gear, but as also part of my survival equipment, because it's uber efficient as far as, being able to use very little energy to do cooking, and the, very low emission as far as smoke. It's just really good. So shout out to David Gordon on that. And I think it's cool stuff. The other thing that David Gordon has created, and we talked about this on Jeranism, and this is something that people should look at least go and check out. I'm not going to say that Globebusters is endorsing it one way or the other, I'm certainly not going to presume to speak for anybody on this panel. Personally, what I like about it is the First Amendment protections that literally I think can be used against the system for just like I said, for First Amendment's type of violations that are going on by YouTube, Google, attacks that are unfounded, and all of a sudden now this, I think, can give us a method of recourse on some of these events. So in that paradigm, I think it's kind of cool. I don't think that there's any denomination or any specific belief other than the Earth is flat and everything else is pretty much up to you. But what it's really offering, I think, is us to have an avenue with First Amendment protection. So you might want to check it out, churchoftheflatearth.com, and join up if you want. And it certainly can't hurt, or don't. Either way, just something to consider. I wanted to make people aware that it was actually out there. And I think David was actually on Iron Realm Media and talked about it in depth about why he and Angel have created this church. And it's also, here on the webpage, the reasoning for doing that. So just something to look at. I know a lot of people absolutely think it's a bad idea. And there's quite a mixed opinion on this thing. So there you have it. Okay, so Iru, I'm getting ready to wrap up here anyway. So if you just want to say your last goodbyes, and then we'll wrap up, and we'll let you start first. How's that sound?
Okay, you are still hearing me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, because I need to change the microphone. It's late here in Switzerland, so I need to go. But thank you for everyone to subscribe to my new English channel. I post the link into the chat, and the conference here in Madrid is based on the NASA Bluebeam project, the main goal of the conference. Then we're gonna have the 10th starting point to the flat Earth and the pilot, things like that. But the main reason for the conference is to talk about the NASA Bluebeam project and their relation with flat Earth. So I hope then I can bring new information, translated into the English, and share with all of you. And beside that, as always, I trying to upload in new information to my English channel. The last video was about the shamanic new medicine, so I invite everyone who wants to get that information to come and visit the English channel, and the rest is uploading information in the Spanish community. So.
All right, beautiful, Iru. Okay, so I get that you have to go. Say hello to Linda from all of us. And how much longer are you going to be in Switzerland?
Until 10th of February.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, when you are, when you don't need to pay hotels and food and things like that, you can stay for a long period of time, of course.
Yeah, that's very cool. All right. Well, I guess we will let you go then, Iru, and we'll go ahead and close down the show. So we will see you next week.
Okay, thank you. And if you want to support me, Patreon.com/Nur para Todos. You can find me there. So see you the next show, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Iru.
Take it easy, Iru. All righty then. Okay, so is there anything you wanted to talk about real quick before we wrap it up, Jeran?
Nothing in particular. Nope. Just everybody can keep an eye on my channel as always. We got Monday Raw, obviously, in the Friday Lounge, and I'm going to spend the rest of my day being hungover. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, birthdays can be kind of a bitch sometimes. You just party too much, but yeah,
a little bit. I don't get to do that very often. I don't get to drink very often. I'm thinking, in fact, the last time I probably had a drink was in Dallas. So that's how rare it is for me to drink. But yeah, I've had a few too many shots for my birthday, but at least people won't have to hear about it anymore. It's past. I'm 40. I'm over it. And I guess maybe you'll hear about it again when I turn 50.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, the big 40. That was a tough one for me. People say 30 was bad, but 40, ugh. And now,
30, right over. 30 didn't even faze me, but 40, it's just kind of that midlife period, that midlife crisis, if you want to call it. Seeing from the top of the hill, however you want to describe it. It is kind of a eye opener, And so, yeah, we just go forward, keep trucking, and see what this crazy thing called life brings me next.
Yep, exactly. Well, I think that this is going to be a very interesting year, to say the least. So I'm certainly going to keep my eyes open, as I would recommend that everybody does, because I think there's just going to be all kinds of crazy crap happening.
Yeah, no, keep that 2020 vision. Who knows, what's coming, but we'll keep doing our part and just, alerting people and letting people see that there is alternative points of view. There is, alternative ways to see things, and it's not dangerous to open your mind a little bit and see some other people's point of views. And like I always say, take the good, leave the bad, and it'll only help you in your life goals.
Yep, absolutely. Always good to keep that open mind, even if you're thinking about aliens eating stars. So
it's okay. Hey, like I said,
right.
I'll listen to it. I'll hear your evidence for it, and it seems that the evidence is that the stars are missing, and therefore they're being eaten by aliens who are millions of years beyond us. But only 50 years ago they crashed in New Mexico. So it's a tough thing to figure out exactly how advanced they are. They're bending space-time, but can't avoid a mountain. There in New Mexico. So who knows?
Yep, exactly.
Well, listen, let him say whatever he wants. I know there's people out there that I respect their research, Jordan Maxwell, other people like that, right? That also have these same ideas and venture into the alien talk. And I get it. I just haven't seen any compelling evidence myself. Doesn't mean that tomorrow I won't believe the same thing. Show me enough evidence, and tomorrow I'll be telling people that the stars are being eaten by little naked aliens.
That's right. You never know. Could happen.
Yeah.
All right, man. All right, cool. We'll definitely look forward to you seeing you on Raw then tomorrow night. And I think that's about it for me. I wanted to give a shout out to Patricia Steere, who is back, as many of you know. She has a new channel, just simply called Patricia Steere, no longer Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes. Patricia, really happy to have you back in the community. You are awesome. And we do support you very much. So glad to have you back. All right. And that's it for us, guys. We will see you next week. And like I said, next week we will have a new Globebuster on. So we'll see what you guys think of Austin. I think you're going to like him. He's a good guy. And he definitely has his own point of view. And that's what I find very refreshing about him. So got to love that. So we'll see you then. Until then, be good to each other. Don't lie to each other. Open your mind, because there's truth inside. Peace out, everybody.
Peace.